Call to order to the regular City Council meeting for Monday, May 6, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. I'd like to welcome everybody here this evening. At this time, I'd ask you to silence your cell phones or put them on vibrate to limit interruptions and out of respect for speakers up at the dais. Moving on to item number 1 on the agenda, and that's the roll call.
Burlingame.
Here.
Evans. Here. Janser. Here. Olson. Here. Pittner. Pajagula.
Here.
Here. Moving on to item number 2, Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving on to the mayor's report, it's going to be a little bit of amended because we do have a full agenda this evening. I do want to start off by thanking city staff, department heads. We started the process today of preparing and getting ready for the 2025 budget. We've been here for most of the day, meeting with department heads and going through presentations, and whether it was Anna and her team setting up the meals and having the hot coffee ready for us, to the department heads. We really appreciate it as a council to kick this off and get this very important process started today. So thank you for all of those involved. Just a couple of events I attended, highlights of since our last meeting. I was invited to the 3rd grade at Perkett for, they called it Mayor Day at Perkett. I spoke to the 3rd grade there. We had a fun time and really enjoyed sitting and getting those difficult questions from those 3rd graders. I also attended the governor's military ball over this last weekend with Councilman Janser. We had a chamber board meeting as well as task force meeting, a number of other meetings that I just did not include on this report. I do have a number of proclamations that I want to get into the record. I know we've got one, and I want to recognize a team here. I presented them with their proclamation. The robotics team from Minot State University, they took part in a regional robotics competition that included teams from North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, and they came back as champions, and we've got them here. So please rise and be recognized for your academic efforts. Good job. Other proclamations that I am going to just place into the record includes May 11th as May 5th through the 11th as Professional Municipal Clerks Week. Woo. I'll present that to the clerk. There you go. Congrats. And then also the mayor proclaims May 12th through the 18th as Peace Officer Memorial Week. So we'll get that off to Chief Klug for his team there too as well. I do want to read one of the proclamations into the record. The mayor proclaims May as Mental Health Awareness Month, and whereas mental health is an essential part of overall well-being, impacting individuals, families, and communities across North Dakota, including Minot, and whereas 2 in 5 adults report anxiety and depression, 2 in 5 teens described experiencing persistent sadness or hopelessness, drug overdose deaths are at near record highs, suicide is the 2nd leading cause of death among young people, and everyone faces challenges in life that can impact their mental health. And whereas, despite its prevalence, mental health remains shrouded in a stigma, preventing many from seeking help, despite early intervention and access to quality care being crucial for managing mental health conditions and improving quality of life. And whereas this month of recognition raises awareness about mental illness, its prevalence in today's society, and its impacts on people of all ages and diverse backgrounds in large communities, rural areas, and in smaller cities like Minot. And whereas residents of Minot, we can work together to create a community where everyone feels supported and empowered to prioritize their mental health, well-being, and is encouraged to seek help from families, friends, and mental health professionals when recommended or needed. Now, therefore do I, Tom Ross, Mayor of the City of Minot, hereby proclaim May as Mental Health Awareness Month in Minot and encourage all residents to educate themselves and others about mental health conditions, challenge stigma by speaking respectfully and inclusively about mental health, seek help if they are struggling with their mental health, support organizations that provide mental health services and advocacy, and work to create safe and supportive environments where all residents can have open conversations about our mental health. And that's signed by myself and Kayla McWilliams. So thank you. Now moving on to, well, that concludes my report. If there's any questions. Seeing none, we can move on to item number 4 on the agenda. That's the city manager's report. Harold.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, there is the city manager memo report included in the packet. I'd be happy to answer any questions if the council has any, and if not, then I have nothing further for this time.
Are there any questions of the city manager? Seeing none, we can move on to item number 5 on the agenda. That's the city attorney's report.
Mayor, members of the council, I submitted a written report, and I'd stand for any questions at this time.
Are there any questions of our city attorney? Any questions? Seeing none, thank you, staff. Moving on to item number 6, that's a public hearing to approve Minot 2024 Renaissance Zone Development Plan. Now is the opportunity for those who wish to come forward to speak in favor of or against the 2024 Renaissance Zone Development Plan. Brian? floor
Good
is yours.
afternoon, Mayor, members of the council. I bring before you today the 2024 Renaissance Zone Development Plan. Staff has made some alterations to the plan and have updated it, and I'd like to go through those changes with you very quickly. I promise to keep this under 10 minutes. Jennifer, are you ready? There we go. Thank you. Next slide, please. So I'll give you some background information on the Renaissance Zone program. It was adopted by the City Council in 2001. Since that time, we've had 105 applications, 83 are completed projects. We have 10 pending projects right now. We have 12 projects that through the years that were either incomplete or are denied. Next slide, please. The program impact, this is on page 6 of the Renaissance Zone Development Plan. I brought in some examples to show you the impact that the program has had on our downtown through the years. And there's five buildings here in our downtown that received benefits in the past, dating anywhere from 2002 to 2013. And you'll see the pre-construction value of these buildings before the work was done and where the property values are today for these buildings. In some instances, these buildings are worth well over $1 million when the value of them before the program was under $100,000. Next slide, please. So Senate Bill 2391 was adopted during the 2023 legislative session. It passed overwhelmingly in both the House and the Senate. It offers an 8-year benefit when at least 75% of a property's full and true value is invested with improvements. It also allows a 10-year time extension. In the past, time extensions were done at 5-year intervals. It also permits the creation of a second island. An island is an area that's not contiguous to the main zone. And then the last benefit is it allows a beneficiary to apply for another benefit 30 years after the previous benefit has expired. So our program was created in 2001. So therefore, I think that project wasn't wrapped up until 2003. So at the very earliest, that provision would not really take effect until the year 2033. So I'm going to go over with you very quickly the approval process for the development plan. I have to seek the approval of the county commissioners and the school board prior to adoption. I've done that already, and I'll report on their findings a little bit later. We must hold a public hearing prior to the adoption. That's going to happen after I speak. And then the development plan must be approved by the North Dakota Department of Commerce. Staff's proposal to the county and school board. Staff proposed that we adopt the 8-year benefit with the minimum investment amount of 75% of the property's true and full value for non-residential projects. This is not going to impact residential projects, only really the commercial projects or apartment complexes. The second proposal was to adopt a second island that's an area that's not contiguous to the zone. And then the third one was to grant the 10-year time extension to the zone. The fourth one was to allow a specific property to receive another benefit after 30 years have elapsed. And then the last one was not related to the Senate Bill 2391, was a map amendment to our Renaissance zone, where we would declare 2 blocks as completed blocks, blocks 2C and 40C, and that we would include 2 new blocks up on North Broadway. So when I brought this to the county commissioners, they made some adjustments to my proposal. Actually, proposal number 4 was denied by the county commissioners. That was not to allow a specific property to receive another benefit after 30 years have lapsed. And the reason for that is they only approved a 5-year time extension, which would extend our Renaissance zone to the year 2029. So if provision number 4 wouldn't take effect until 2033, it made no sense to adopt it right now. So that's something we can push in the future. But the commissioners approved the 8-year benefit, but they wanted a minimum investment amount of 150% of the property's true and full value. So therefore, for a $200,000 building, under what the state had prescribed, $150,000 would have to be invested to meet that threshold. Under what the county commissioners approved, we'd have to have a $300,000 investment. It basically doubled the minimum investment needed in order to hit the 8-year benefit. We currently have a 5-year benefit at 50%. We're not getting rid of that. We're going to keep that. The 8-year benefit is going to be the next level above the 5 years. So if you have a lot of work that needs to be done, you could apply for the 8-year benefit. If it's a standard project, I would recommend people to go for the 5-year. The county commissioners approved the adoption of the second island, and they approved the map amendments that I had just proposed. After the county commissioners, I brought this to the school board. They adopted all of the county commissioners' provisions unanimously. So these are the completed blocks that I referred to earlier. Block 2C contains a strip mall with the mattress store, and Block 40C is the CTE building, which is a public building. It really would not qualify for any of the Renaissance zone benefits. So there really is no need to keep these blocks in the Renaissance zone. They're what I would consider completed blocks. And we're going to replace those blocks with the next map. There we go. So Block 1F on the south side, this is on the west side of Broadway. Block 1F will contain Pinkerton's Animal Hospital, Watts Alterations, and the Economy Hotel. And Block 2F on the north side would contain Hardee's, a vacant lot between Hardee's and the Vegas Hotel. So those are the properties that would now qualify for future Renaissance zone benefits. And if adopted, this is how the map would look. Any blocks that are highlighted in gray are completed blocks. They've been taken out of the zone. And you'll see at the very top side, in the north side of the map, blocks 1F and 2F are added. That is actually an island, since it's not contiguous to the zone. And that's our first island. We can create one more island in the future if necessary, thanks to the new legislation. So I've put together some aspirations. I know the council has aspirations for how they want to see things function within the city. And I've tried to match your aspirations to our Renaissance Zone program. So under dynamic and flourishing, I've got the Minot Renaissance Zone has a proven record of fostering renewal in downtown Minot. Under resilient and prepared, the Minot Renaissance Zone prevents the spread of slum and blight in aging neighborhoods. Under safe and welcoming, I have the Minot Renaissance Zone encourages the revitalization of historic buildings and makes Minot more appealing to residents and visitors. And the last one, excellent connected. The Minot Renaissance Zone makes Minot more attractive to investors, entrepreneurs, small business owners, and corporations, and improves the quality of life in Minot. So with that, my recommendation is that you adopt the 2024 development plan. Your Renaissance Zone Review Board reviewed this at their last meeting, and they gave a unanimous recommendation for adoption. and that the council should also authorize staff to submit the development plan to the North Dakota Commerce Department for ratification. So with that, I stand available for your questions. Oh, and by the way, this property on the left, this picture was taken about 12 years ago. And today it's now a very functional building where Prairie Sky Breads, Guilty Sweets, and other businesses are located in our downtown. And they took advantage of the Renaissance program today. And this is exactly the kind of the results we're looking for when we approve these projects. So I stand available for questions, and thank you for your support.
Are there any questions, Brian? Steve, any? Go ahead, Steve.
I have long supported this program, and I think most everybody on the council has also. When I talk with some people in the community, they have real reservations about it. They see it as a giveaway, as socialism in a sense toward private business. And they, again, a small group of people, but a vocal group of people say this is just not something we should be doing. One of the arguments I hear is that, well, if we lower taxes on these people, that means we, the other remaining taxpayers, have to pay more, and that it's just a subsidy. It's a tampering with the free market. It's not something the government should be doing. Now, you're a development professional. You spend your entire career in trying to help communities become better, and you're doing that here. How would you respond to people who say that this is just a giveaway, that it's not something we should be doing for our community?
Mayor Ross, Alderman Padrigula, my response would be, without the benefits of this program provides, you would not see the urban renewal that's happening in our downtown. A lot of the old buildings in recent years that have been fixed up, they needed the help. There's no way that the developers of these buildings could have made their projects pencil out without this assistance. And I would also argue that the people who pay the most property tax because of this program are the beneficiaries afterwards. If you were to look at what they paid on property tax before the program and what they're paid for property tax after the program expires for them, it's amazing that within 1 to 5 years, we typically get our money back that we had lost during that period. And since then, it just keeps going further and further. So if you go back to the slide I showed earlier with all the table with all the property values, it's a way to help increase property values. It's a way to help attract new businesses to our downtown. It's a way to create jobs in our downtown and improves the quality of our life in downtown as well. I think it's worth having. Without having this program, I don't think that most of these projects ever would have come to fruition.
Your answer raises another concern that I sometimes hear from people, is that this is focusing too much on downtown, that we've spent tens of millions of dollars on downtown, and it's not fair. It gives downtown an advantage of some sort over businesses and other parts of the community. How would you respond to that?
Well, Alderman Padrigula, my first response would be, it's not just, this program is not just intended for downtown only right now. We're also allowing it in properties along North Broadway that also need help as well. So it's not just a downtown-centric project anymore. It's designed to reach out. The goal is to get these blocks completed so that way we can spread the program to other parts of the city. We're only limited to 42 blocks in our city, which is a very small amount for a city of our size. Small cities that have a population of 1,000 can have 34 blocks. So they can pretty much put their entire town in the Renaissance zone. We're only limited to 42 blocks. I wouldn't mind seeing an effort to try to increase that number at a future legislative session where we maybe get some more blocks put into our city, because we do have other neighborhoods in our city that could benefit from this program.
So just to make sure I understand this, your expert opinion, and I use that terminology because I do a lot of work in the legal field and I'm an expert in some areas, because of your education, your experience, and your training, your expert opinion as a development professional is that this is a viable program, that it's a justified program, and that more than pays for itself. Am I correct?
Alderman Padrigula, totally correct. In fact, I've had the privilege of working in other states, and we never had a program like this available in any of the states I've worked in the past. And I really wish that this was available in the states where I'd worked in the past, because I think a lot of the problems that we saw in our aging neighborhoods could have been solved by having this kind of program available.
I appreciate your expert opinion.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Scott?
So first off, I just want to clarify again, going along a little bit what Alderman Potter-Gully did to kind of maybe clarify some of the misinformation out there. A few weeks ago in the Minot Daily News, in the letters to the editor, somebody stated that over 42 blocks of Minot receive property tax breaks for at least 5 years. Obviously, it's not all 42 blocks that receive that are part of this that receive property tax breaks, correct?
Oh, that's correct. Yeah, in order for them to qualify, they have to invest that threshold of money that's required by the program. So they'd have to make an application with my office, go before the Renaissance Zone Review Board to get approval, and then the city council for a public hearing, then the state of North Dakota approves it. Once they get their conditional approval at that point, then they can begin their construction work. And then we go, after they're done, we go in and verify that the work was done. We bring the assessor in to ensure everything was done properly. And then we bring them forward for final approval to the council and then on to the state as well. So they don't qualify until they make that investment in their property. Sure. And then, as the way the rules are written now, Alderman Burlingame, they're not eligible for a second benefit. Right now, they're only eligible for one benefit. It's a one and done program as it stands right now. That's something that could change though in the future.
So with that, for example, one of the properties that are listed on your program impact slide, I just did a quick little back of the napkin math, and 2013, when it went into that program, was paying about a little over $1,000 in property taxes. So then for give or take 5 years, they wouldn't have paid that. Is that correct?
That's correct. After their final approval was approved.
So last year I looked, it was $28,000 that property paid in property taxes. So easily within a year, they had paid back that loss, if you will, with that increased investment. And then every year going on for perpetuity, as long as that building exists, they're going to pay significantly more in
For
property
decades.
taxes.
I would say for decades, for sure. These are long-term investments that they're making into these buildings. So.
And not to mention the fact that, as you mentioned, I was downtown for the train, the locomotive that was in town, and it was a horrible rainy day and cold, and yet many of these businesses that are listed on here were packed full of people, and there wasn't a parking spot to be found. And if you go back in time 5-6 years ago, that wasn't the case. There was, secondhand stores and empty lots down there. So it's a significant amount of economic activity that's been spurred by this, with jobs and construction and all of that stuff as well.
Correct.
Thank you, that's all.
Anything else for Brian? If not, thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Continuing on with the public hearing, now is an opportunity for those who wish to speak in favor of the Renaissance Zone 2024 plan. Now is your opportunity to step forward. Those who wish to speak against it, you're welcome to the podium as well.
Mr. Mayor and City Council, I'm Peter Hugret. I am the chair of the Renaissance Committee. I've been on it since it started in 2001. I just want to add my support. I've seen what this program has done. I'm sure all of you have seen throughout the city of what has taken place. Most of the buildings within the 5-year period or right after the 5-year period, the tax break comes back, and it's usually enough that it makes up for the whole 5 years that the taxes were reduced. And I agree with Brian. I think that if we didn't do this, our downtown would look pretty blighted. And as Brian mentioned too, once we get completed blocks, then we can move out like up and down Broadway or out 4th Avenue Northwest, some of these places that need it. So anyway, I would ask for your support. I think it's a good program. I think it's done a lot. So thank you.
Thank you. Continuing on with the public hearing, now is your opportunity to speak in favor of or against the proposed 2024 Renaissance Zone plan. Final call. What are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we close the public hearing and approve the item with recommendations of staff.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Paul.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Brian Billingsley, the Renaissance Review Board, Pete Hugret for shepherding this through the other entities in Minot and being very diligent on continuing this asset, I think, for the city and for the community. And again, a lot of different opinions on this. My opinion is this doesn't help just downtown. Like, again, the blocks that are proposed to go in it, we talk about blighted properties on North Hill, the hotels that we've had, previous hotels that we've had conversations on. You look at flood improvements and flood protection that's going through the city. I think this is a tool that will be vital in reestablishing some neighborhoods, some commercial properties, some commercial areas. After we see flood protection go through, I think having this tool in the toolbox is vital for the success of Minot. I think it's vital to allow opportunities for small businesses to flourish. Small businesses that are starting that can barely even get a loan. And if a developer is able to go in and redevelop a property and provide spaces for small businesses and entrepreneurs in our community to have a space to bring their product, their ideas to life, I think it's a good thing. Not on top of the quality of life aspects that those businesses provide, on top of the sales tax, the jobs that it creates. So again, I think it's a good thing. I think it's a great tool. I applaud the work of the Renaissance Board, and I'm the liaison to that committee and what they do, and truly, and I don't, this isn't lip service, I'm not BSing anybody. These projects do not pencil out. I challenge you to go ask some of these developers that have done these projects if they've taken a dime out of that property since they've done these projects. And then they're gonna be hit in 5 years with a tax bill, 10 to 15 times greater than what it would have been if they had done nothing with it. And then also what happens to these properties that are blighted, that becomes in such disrepair, they can't even sell these properties, and they go back to the county on taxes. And then we're faced with them as a blighted building, as a big M building that checker our downtown, checker our community, North Hill, South Hill, East and West. So again, I'm very enthusiastically going to support this item tonight.
Any other comments? Yes, Harold.
Just a point of clarification, Brian did a good job outlining the feedback from the county commission as well as the school district. But what I'm seeing on the screen is the original staff recommendations. So I guess my question of clarification is the recommendation to approve what staff has recommended? Are we approving the changes that were recommended by the county commission and the school board, that being 150% investment for our recommendation number 1?
It would be with the county's recommendations. I believe it has to be.
That's what I assumed. I just wanted to clarify because that doesn't match what's on the screen right now publicly.
Nope, I appreciate that.
It's, good point, Harold. I didn't pay attention to the screen there, but that is what I originally proposed. That's under section 3B of my city council memo. It was taken from there. My recommendation under the recommended action is just to adopt the 2024 development plan and authorize staff to submit it to the state of North Dakota for approval. So that is the recommendation. Thank you.
Harold? Any other comments? Seeing none, we have a motion on the floor and a second to approve the 2024 proposed Minot Renaissance Zone Development Plan. Please call the roll.
Bittner,
Yes.
Padrigula.
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Burlingame,
Yes.
Evans. Yes. Janser,
Yes.
Olson.
Motion carries. Moving on to item number 7 on the agenda is our consent agenda. Currently, we have 27 items on our consent agenda tonight. We have been asked to pull 7.18, so that has been pulled. Are there any other items that need to be pulled? Seeing that there are none, what are the wishes of the council?
Move approval on remaining items.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Bittner,
Yes.
Padrigula.
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Burlingame,
Yes.
Evans. Yes. Janser,
Yes.
Olson.
Motion carries. Moving on to the pulled item, 7.18, taxi fare fees and ordinance. What are the wishes of the council? Carrie?
I'd like to make a motion to approve with the amendments I am handing out, that Michaela has. You can
Sorry.
Keep a copy. So agree that.
Let's first get a second.
I'll second.
So we can have discussion. We have a motion and a second. Now, Carrie, the floor is yours.
So my amendment is pretty simple. I do not believe that council should be in the business of telling businesses what they can charge and not charge. I believe the free market is fully capable of doing that. So my amendment is to remove two portions of the code that have council setting the fare. And bringing in two additional items that I found in Bismarck's that I really like. One was requiring the company to send the city clerk a copy of their fares on a yearly basis, all their charges, so that it is in city. And then a second provision that Bismarck has that is prohibiting additional fees or additional charges for disabled taxi service. So the motion is to, the changes that Steph made about the chief of, police and those things, keeping those, but striking out council's, it's a power the Century Code gives us, but I don't believe we should always be using those powers. There is no other business in the city that we regulate like this. If we find, I believe that this law probably was passed at a time when there wasn't ride sharing, where there probably was more than one private taxi company in the city. It's just not, our reality in 2024 is different. And I would like the free market to see, to dictate what our business owners charge for their fees. So that's why I am making this amendment.
Any other discussion? Scott?
I just want to say that our city unfortunately went for several years without a taxi company, and it was less than ideal for many, many people. And I'll support Alderwoman Evans' amendment tonight in under the same guise of let's let the free market decide what the best thing is to do here for the prices. I'm guessing it was probably at one point, I don't know, maybe put in to control prices or something, but at this point, I just want a taxi cab company in this town, and if we can get out of the way and make that easier, let's do it.
Steve?
I wanted to ask staff if they're aware of the existence and operation of these ride-sharing services like Lyft and what's the other one? Uber in town. And if so, if the city in any way regulates, or if it's commonly done in other cities, their fares and fees.
Steph?
Mayor Alderman Padragula, we're aware of Lyft, I believe is maybe the only rideshare company that's in town, and they're regulated by the state.
In terms of fees?
I'm not aware if they're regulated by
No,
the state in terms of
in
fees.
terms of license, what the requirements are to operate in the state, but not fares. Those are completely dictated by the company.
So would they, for example, have to have a safety inspection and background checks on drivers? As we
Background
require?
checks on drivers, a certain amount of insurance the drivers have to have. They have to be compliant with, the ADA in providing services to service dogs and animals and
Thank
people
you.
with mobility aids. But the state does not dictate the actual fare.
Thank you. That even makes me want to support your amendment even more strongly, because I think there would be an inappropriate kind of tipping of the balance in favor of one ride provision service, which could charge whatever they wanted, versus another which is limited by the council. I think it's good to have a level playing field when it comes to something like this. To me, the important things are safe vehicles, safe drivers, and the ability for people with disabilities to use these modes of transportation as easily and freely as possible.
Thank you. Any other comments? Scott?
Sorry, I just want to add in, and to jump off of what Alderman Patagula just said, the ride shares, absolutely, they are, based on time of the day and need, and I have heard from folks recently about how expensive ride shares are becoming. Being $30 to get across Minot is getting to be pretty expensive, and they're inconsistent also. So once again, another reason why I don't want to have anything the city does hinder that ability to create some competition, which can ultimately drive it down as well, so.
I just have one PS. I just
Go
want to
ahead, Carrie.
remind council that, they will be required to file their fare. So if it does become a problem in the future and there is unfairness, the council can, rewrite the ordinance in a way that council does oversee this.
Any further debate? Any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Evans.
Yes.
Janser.
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Pittner. Padragula.
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
Burlingame.
Yes.
Moving on to item 8 on our agenda, action items. 8.1, public hearing for the Wayne Johnson move request. Now is an opportunity for those who wish to speak in favor of or against the proposal for, I believe it's a home, single-family residence being moved. Now is your opportunity to step forward to either speak in favor of or against the proposed. Second call. Seeing no comments, what are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor,
Mark?
I would move that we close the public hearing and approve the item as recommended by the staff.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
A motion and a second, is there any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Janser.
Yes.
Olson. Yes. Pittner.
Yes.
Padragula. Ross. Yes. Burlingame.
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Moving on to item 8.2, 16th Street Southwest Reconstruction Engineering Contract Amendment. What are the wishes of the council?
Move approval.
We have a motion by Paul, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Lisa. Is there any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Pittner.
Yes.
Padragula.
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
Burlingame.
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Janser.
Yes.
Olson.
Moving on to item 8.3 on the agenda, the 16th Street Southwest Reconstruction Documented Categorical Exclusion Approval. What are the wishes of the council?
So move.
I have a motion by Mark. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Paul. Is there any discussion? We do have some discussion.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Tonight, I have with me Matt Kinsella and Levi Heller with Apex Engineering Group. And they're going to give you a brief presentation on our project tonight. Looks like they loaded that up for you, so. As you remember, we had to split this project in half. We have a north half and a south half. And tonight, we're going to focus on the south half. So the north half, that got pushed to probably 2028. That's about when we're looking at reconstructing that section. So we had to hit the pause button on that. We'll be coming back probably in a month or two, excuse me, to talk about that and to basically rescope that project and to bring that to you and work through that. But tonight, what we're going to talk about is the public comments that we received on the south section, the environmental document, and some options that we want to present to you and have you move forward with that so that we can start final design for a target plan completion of August so that we can move this forward in the process and get this out for bid, receive bids, and then bring that back to you for a bid recommendation in November for a 2025 construction start. So with that, I'll let these gentlemen walk you through that, and then if there's questions afterwards, we can go ahead and answer those.
Is there a clicker on the dice?
I'm sorry?
Is there a clicker up there?
There is.
Okay, if you use that star as you want to advance for anybody tonight doing presentations, if you point the clicker there, it should advance the screen for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lance, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. Sorry, can't lean on that too hard, I guess. I'm Matt Kinsella. I'm project manager for this project with Apex Engineering Group. With me also presenting today, I have Levi Heller, also with Apex Engineering Group. And as Lance said, we just want to walk you through and give you an update on what we've been doing on this project and some of the developments that have happened and where we're going to go from here. Skip through that, I guess. So real quick here, before we get into the details, just wanted to highlight, on the right there, in addition to Apex being the lead consultant on this project, we have a number of other consultants that are helping us deliver this project for the city, and everyone has really had a lot of contributions here so far and really appreciate all the help. In addition, on the left, you'll see our agency partners, of course, led by Lance and his staff here at the city, Jason Sorensen as well. And then with the federal funding on this project, we do have the North Dakota DOT involved, both the central office in Bismarck and Chad Beggs here with the Minot District. So this is our plan tonight. Again, we're just going to give you an overview for the project. We'll try to keep this fairly short, 10 to 12 minutes, I think. And then we can take any questions, as Lance mentioned, here when we're done. So for those of you that aren't as familiar with the project area, I know this map's a little bit small and difficult to see, but we're looking at 16th Street Southwest, of course, here on the west side of the city. The limits of our project go from 14th Avenue Southwest on the south side, including that intersection, across Burdick Expressway, across the river, and then up to 2nd Avenue Southwest. So this is the original study area that we started this project development process with. And that was about a year ago that we started in May, and we really spent the first 6 months working through the environmental process, developing alternatives. We had a public input meeting in November last year. I think several of you were at that meeting, and we had fantastic attendance from the public, which we really appreciate as a consultant team. So we took that feedback, we worked with the city and the DOT, and we refined some of the alternatives, developed some new alternatives. But the other thing that kind of came up at that time is that the project costs, due to a number of factors, were increasing. And I think that Lance, back on March 4th, came to the council and spoke to you about that, and the decision by the council at that time was to split the project into 2 different phases, which you can see here on the screen. We now have the what we call the South Project, which essentially the split is at Burdick Expressway as a logical phasing point for the projects. So everything south of that is the South Project, shown in yellow, and that is still on track for 2025 construction, as Lance mentioned earlier. And then in addition, we've split the items to the north of Burdick into that North Project, and that's right now targeted for 2028 construction. So a little bit further out there, we're not actively developing that right now because we're focused on the South Project, but we certainly are still receiving feedback, and we've updated the website recently for those of you that look at that and make sure that we have that information out there, and we can still receive comments on that North Project as well. So real quickly here on some of the reasons we're doing this South Project, and then I'm going to turn it over to Levi to go through the alternatives. What we're doing here is we're replacing replacing the existing asphalt with new concrete from 14th Avenue up to Burdick, as we mentioned. Also putting in new concrete at the Burdick intersection, replacing that concrete that's out there now. As you can see in the photo on the bottom right, there's some areas of deterioration there, so we're taking that opportunity to replace about 300 feet each direction on Burdick. And then another really important element, and this is really what you'll see in these alternatives here coming up, with this project is we want to plan for the city's future to the south with the storm sewer system and providing a regional retention pond. You can see this area in yellow, which is really bounded by 16th Avenue on the south and 7th Street on the east. It's a really large area. It's about 250 acres of a watershed that drains into this system, eventually down towards the Burdick and 16th intersection and outfalling to the river in that area. And that obviously is a really important intersection with both the railroad underpass and the bridge across the river that we want to look to try to protect in large flooding and storm events, the duration of that flooding and also the depth of flooding that happens there for emergency vehicle services and other reasons. That, again, one of the things we're looking at with this project is a place to put a regional retention pond, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. And then on the bottom there, just a couple other needs that we're looking at in this segment of the corridor is the lack of left turn lanes south of 11th Avenue. And then we're also taking the opportunity to go through and upgrade the bicycle and ADA facilities as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Levi.
So this is an existing roadway that's out there now that we're all familiar with the 4 lanes and shared use path. what we've kind of developed here is adding that center turn lane, increasing the shared use path size so that it meets current standards. And then with that red line up there, what we're showing is that all of our widening is going to the west, and we're trying to reduce any impacts to the property owners to the east there. One benefit of that is that we would need to acquire some right-of-way for the roadway widening, and it's all from one property owner. So it's a lot easier to work through than doing multiple properties along the east side. This is an animation, so I think this isn't gonna work the way that it was put in here, but this was shown at the public input meeting. Some of the other things we're proposing too is adding a 30-mile-an-hour kind of transition speed zone. Right now it goes from 40 to 25 right at that 11th Street intersection. We went through and studied all the traffic flow through there, and turn lengths and storage will be improved to meet future standards. Revised signal system at 11th Avenue or a new signal on 11th and a revised at Burdick, and those will take into account how long a duration the left turn protected arrows need to be, and it will also include the yellow flashing left turn arrows. New lighting, and then the drainage throughout that entire corridor will be improved to include the 12th Avenue Southwest intersection. So that base alternative is kind of already there. What we're here really to talk about are these pond alternatives. So we have all three of them up on the screen, and we go from 1 to 3A to 4, and at some point in there we had more, but some of them really just weren't even workable, so we removed those out. So we'll dive into those a little bit more. So we started with this pond scenario number 1, which all this takes place on the same property. The property that we would be putting this on, they don't receive any drainage benefits or anything. It's only from the road that would be receiving these benefits. So the city has a 100-year storm requirement. We started up in this top corner, tried to reduce the footprint of it. Pretty quick when we start modeling and what kind of flows that come into it, we realized that this size of pond was just not going to meet the requirements of the city. So we would have higher duration of flooding in the Burdick Expressway. And I'll talk about this a little bit more, but when we went further on this project, this was just not a desirable outcome with the property owner. Serial 3A, there's quite a bit of grade on this property. Going to the south, it increases in elevation by about 40 feet. So that's why you can't just have one big pond out there. And we went with this 2-tiered pond system. And at this level here, it passed the 100-year storm event, the city requirement, and then it lowered the duration of flooding in the Burdick Expressway intersection. However, this too also had undesirable impacts to the property owner because we went with scenario 1 and 3A to the property owner. And Lance was involved with all these negotiations and different talks that we were having with the landowner at this time. Scenario 4, the main thing we did is we reduced the pond size on the north end of the property because the property owner was concerned that they actually is a usable area at the bottom at the edge of their kind of their driveway area there that they could still use, and they didn't want that taken up with pond. We reduced the pond on the north end and increased the pond size on the south end. This meets the 100-year requirement, reduces the flooding. And this would be the preferred configuration for the landowner and would be the preferred alternative that we'd be moving forward with tonight or proposing tonight. However, with that, it is roughly 8.74 acres of impacted property on this property. It really makes one of the concerns with the landowner that makes the very south end of the property basically unusable and more for them to maintain. So that's kind of how we landed with this proposal. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Matt.
Okay, thanks, Levi. Just a couple slides here on cost and schedule, and then we can take any questions that you might have. So this table here shows the 3 build alternatives that Levi just described. And the first column shows the construction and engineering costs, and you can see that those are fairly close across the 3 alternatives. The second column showing the land acquisition costs shows where some of that difference is that Levi just described, acquiring more property with those systems that have the upper pond and require that land as well. And then for your reference on the right there, you can see the total cost shown in black and then the federal contribution shown in red, which is capped. The federal funds are capped at that number, and we are hitting that cap with any of the alternatives, as you can see. And then the difference, of course, the city obligation is shown in blue. This shows the timeline for the south project only, not the north project. As we mentioned, that one's delayed out to about 2028 right now. But as you can see, we're about in the middle of this timeline. And things are going to move pretty quickly after this if of course, things go well and we get our environmental clearance. We're going to move very quickly into design and then right-of-way acquisition. Obviously, that's a large piece of right-of-way to acquire. The nice thing, as Levi mentioned, is that we have been in conversation with the landowner already, and they're aware of this. And as he mentioned, their preferred configuration for the pond is that scenario 4. But anyway, the goal would be to wrap this up again in August and then be ready to construct next spring. So with that, I want to thank you again for your time, and we can take any comments that you might have.
Are there any questions?
Yeah, I had a variety of questions. I guess the first one is, I like the idea of a wider roadway because people go pretty fast up and down that hill. And I think having that center turn lane would be helpful. It would make me feel more comfortable not being a foot or two away from somebody driving right at me at 40 miles an hour. You say that, well, but there are no places to turn left except for that Cook Drive, 14th Avenue, and the one by the high school. There are no driveways or anything. So kind of justify that.
It's an excellent question, Alderman Padragula, and we did look at that. What happens there is by the time, with the 4-lane roadway and then to add the 5th lane or the middle lane, we have to taper, those lanes out to create that width and then develop the turn lane as well. So we did look at that option too. If we just put in a turn lane at 11.5 and just put in a turn lane at 14th, what that would look like. And by the time you get those tapers in and then taper back to a 4-lane and then back out to a 5-lane, we kind of looked at that with Lance, and it didn't make a lot of sense to keep doing that, to keep shifting traffic that way. So ultimately, it made more sense just to keep that consistent section through there.
Would that also help with travel in the winter? I know that's a very steep hill, and a lot of times, again, on occasion, traffic's been stopped until they finish sanding the hill. It's kind of dangerous to go down at 40 miles an hour. Would the wider roadway help with that, with snow removal and ice
As far as having the people stopped or just?
Or making it easier for our crews to clean it and giving people more room. Because that's one of the other things I've noticed too, is that snow tends to pile up. It's hard for the plow drivers sometimes to clear it to the edge. So you go from 2 lanes to 1.5 lane, and the transition from 2 to 1.5 is a little bit challenging for a driver.
And it's hard to say, but I would say that having that center turn lane available provides that extra space rather than, when you got those 2 inside lanes right up against each other, you don't have any buffer to move one way or the other if, you have an issue with somebody encroaching from the outside lane. So having that center lane, there's now an 11-foot buffer between those opposing directions, which just provides that opportunity to move over a little bit if you have to, if, say, that outside lane is reduced during the winter.
You also mentioned that one of the considerations in the ponds was the desire of the landowner. And I think flooding at that intersection of Burdick and 16th is becoming even more of a problem or more of an issue because of the hospital and people now using 16th to get there. So I think keeping that intersection free of water or keeping the level down is really, really critical. Is the proposal that you're recommending, is that the best for that issue? I mean, I think it's nice to keep the property owner's interests in mind, but they're superseding interests. And from a hydrological standpoint, is the 2-pond solution that you're proposing the best one?
What it does is it meets the city's requirement to have that 100-year storm event contained in the pond or in the 2-pond system with an additional 1 foot of freeboard, meaning there'd be a foot. If we had that 100-year storm event, it filled up, there'd still be a foot to the top of the pond. So I would say yes to answer your question. And we did work really closely with Lance on a lot of different options. We'd go to the landowner, they would, have issues here and there, and we'd come back and try to work out another scenario that would work to fit within that footprint, but still meet those requirements. So
So your proposed two-pond solution is the best for preventing water buildup at that intersection?
I guess what I would say is that it meets the city's requirement for that 100-year design, you know. And with the scenarios that we looked at that we could work with in that area, it's the best of those three that we looked at here today. Yeah, I
Lance
guess
looked
that's
like
how
he
I would
was
answer that
ready to
question.
get up, and I want to give him a chance.
Lance can add to add to that.
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Padragula, I think it's the best that we can do with this project. So it meets the city's stormwater design standards, right? So that's step one, is making sure that we meet our own requirements. It meets the DOT's design standards, so that's step two. It's a workable solution that the landowner can get behind, right? Because if we present something that is a non-starter for them, that won't even get them to the negotiating table, then we're behind the ball right off the jump. So for this
Eminent
project,
domain is
I
something we
think
wanna
it,
avoid.
you know, we've checked the boxes we need to check. I think looking to the future, I think what I would like to envision is someday when we look at reconstructing Burdick Expressway, which is many, many years from now, I think we have an opportunity to enhance what we would have with this project and maybe construct an additional outfall to get water out of the system faster. That's not possible really with this project, but with an additional project someday, we could work with the railroad because we'd have to jack and bore an additional outfall underneath their tracks and get it to the river. So I think the best way to look at this is probably a two-stage project, and this is stage one.
That makes me feel much more comfortable, because I remember the issues we've had by the underpass here by the old city hall, and it took a humongous project to take care of that drainage, that watershed, and that was quite large. So I think hearing you talk, I think I realize the importance of drainage and that it may not be solvable with just one project at one point. So thank you for that explanation. Now, the last is kind of a quirky point, but some years ago, we had a moose that wandered into town and stayed there for a few days. I don't know if the moose ended up getting hit and killed or not, but it really was a major traffic hazard. I know you can't, station hunters there or some sort of moose repelling device, but that's something to consider. For some strange reason, this moose wanted to bed down there, and on that road, it's kind of dangerous. And I think if you have a pond, it's going to potentially be more attractive. Or can you control vegetation so there wouldn't be any source of food there?
Well, Mr. Mayor and Alderman Padragula, with this project, there won't be any trees in the pond. So,
Okay.
today it's kind of wooded in that area, and with this project, we'd have to remove all of those trees because there's essentially going to be a very, very large excavation on that hillside, so all those trees will be gone. So I don't think it'd be very attractive to wildlife anymore.
Okay. Would you plant eventually any ornamental trees? Because that's a big lot.
Potentially, we haven't gotten that far into the design yet. I think the intent would be to plant some trees at a place that makes sense, but, we haven't got to that part yet.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Lisa?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Matt, I was at the public meeting, and there were a lot of comments, and if I recall correctly, most of them were on the north end of this project. But were there any comments that were submitted or anything that I have forgotten about this part of the project that have not been addressed?
No, I would say that's not the case. Yeah, probably 98% of the comments we got were on the north part of the project.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you, Matt. Thank you for your presentation. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula, Ross,
Yes.
Burlingame, Evans,
Yes. Yes.
Moving on to item 8.4, the automatic door ordinance. What are the wishes of the council?
I'd like to move approval.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any debate? Any discussion? Any discussion? Carrie?
Just,
Carrie?
thank you for all you prepared, City Attorney. I'm wondering, can you just sort of walk us
Steph?
through it? Because that memo is very meaty.
Definitely. So Mayor, members of the council, a lot of what's in the memo is following up from some questions that were received at a previous meeting. Pull up that memo. I can briefly go through some of those. So one of the questions that was asked was clarification on what current city programs this ordinance would apply to. As written, it would apply to the facade improvement program and participants in other city funding programs that could arise that receive city funds for building improvements or new construction. We did make an amendment to the ordinance, and I can plug into Dias 7 and share my screen to kind of show the crowd the changes that we've made to affect that. So up in the title of what will be the new Article 3, it specifies that the accessibility requirements for buildings receiving public funds will be for building improvements or new construction. A second request for clarification was on whether the ordinance would be applicable to organizations that are receiving funds from the city that are not for building improvements. As currently written, the ordinance would not be applicable to organizations that receive funds from the city that are not for building improvements or new construction. That's a bar to this ordinance being applicable. Alderman Burlingame asked staff to advise how the ordinance affects home-based businesses such as home daycares. To alleviate that concern, we inserted specific language in the ordinance under subsection A, subsection B, to the use groups. The article will only apply to buildings or businesses that are established for public and private institutional uses and commercial uses, as identified in the table of uses found in Chapter 2.2 of the Minot Land Development Ordinance. So before the meeting, we handed out to the council a paper copy of the use table that's found in our Land Development Ordinance online. I have pulled up a copy of our Land Development Ordinance here on page 2.3 is where the use table key starts, and you move into the table of uses. Up here above each table, it explains what use it's applying to. So this is where you'll find the public and private institutional uses. It'll describe different examples of the use types, such as banquet halls, clubs, convention centers, libraries, museums. So pages 2.4 of the Land Development Code is where the public and private institutional uses start. Commercial uses begin on page 2.5 of that Land Development Ordinance here. Again, you'll see the example use types here in this table that are listed. So commercial rec, indoor, commercial rec, outdoor, brew pubs, cocktail lounges. Those are those will all be applicable. But underneath that use groups, we put with the exception of home-based businesses. We specifically accepted them. So any concerns, especially with home daycares, those would be not applicable with this ordinance. Moving on, Alderman Padrigula asked us to reach out to Mandan City Attorney to advise if they've experienced any adversity, litigation, complaints with their ordinance. I've included her response there. In some, no, they haven't had any issues with it, and they're not aware of their city imposing this requirement outside of the context of their facade improvement program. For the city of Mandan, it's isolated to that particular program, is my understanding. The council asked the finance department, Service Space and Planning Council, visit Minot and MAC EDC to generate lists of organizations that have received over $5,000 from the city of Minot over the past 5 years. Those reports were attached to the council agenda. Alderwoman Evans asked for information on whether tenants are required to comply with this ordinance, and the answer is no. Tenants would typically not be applying for city funds for building improvements, and if they did, the city would be requiring the property owner to be the applicant, and the property owner would need to be the one complying with the ordinance, asking for money to improve their building. City Manager Stewart asked if the ordinance would apply to TIF applications and tax abatements. And we have not located any case law, attorney general opinions, or legal authority explicitly stating that TIF districts and tax abatements are considered public funds, but we think there's a strong argument to be made that properties that receive the benefit of those financing mechanisms do receive the benefit of public funds. So I think that likely the answer is yes to that, but like I said, we haven't found specific authority that's stating that exact statement. And then keeping in mind, usually those properties that are receiving large amounts, like TIF districts at the instance, they're making improvements at the building code with the amount of money that they're making and they're investing in that property for that improvement, they would probably likely have to make significant ADA improvements anyways. So with that, I can stand for any questions you have regarding this proposed amendment. One thing that I know staff did kind of briefly discuss as we went through this was that an automatic door is currently defined under here means a door equipped with a power-operated mechanism and controls that open and close the door automatically upon receipt of a momentary actuating signal. The switch that begins the automatic signal may be a photoelectric drive, floor mat, or manual switch. This definition is taken directly from Mandan's ordinance. That's kind of where this discussion arose was we were asked to draft an ordinance that's comparable to Mandan's. One question that arose during our conversations is that door used throughout this ordinance is singular. And as you'll notice, like the main entrance here to City Hall has what's commonly referred to as a vestibule. So you'll have one door that you go in, and then you'll be inside the vestibule, and then you'll go through a second door. And so one question that arose was, is a loophole, you only need one automatic door, so you're only getting inside the vestibule and not through the vestibule into the interior of the building. So that's an amendment that we could easily make here if the council so chooses to pass this amendment on, or this ordinance on first reading here today. An amendment would just have to be offered.
Carrie?
I forgot my question now. I was like, I do want to offer that amendment, but first, so do we, so as it stands, how you wrote the ordinance, it would be, we would construct it to include TIFs, right? We're not.
Yes.
Okay, so we don't have to put anything. We are going to, for legislative intent purposes, say that is public funds.
Yes. That would be the recommendation if somebody came to me with that question here today would be yes.
But I think you are right. A lot of the, they're big projects. They're
They're
gonna be
huge
doing that,
projects.
right? So do we have a motion?
The motion was to, well, technically.
I didn't ask. I inadvertently asked what are the wishes of the council. You made a motion to approve, which
Okay,
would
can I
be-
approve with amendment? Can I change that to approve with amendment? To define door to include, if it is a vestibule, you can figure out the language, but if it's vestibule, it's a vestibule building, right, both doors would be applicable.
It would contemplate two automatic doors if a vestibule
Right, if it takes
is
two doors to
involved.
get inside, physically into a building, yes, both of those
We can definitely draft that.
for second reading.
So just for clarification, you made a motion to approve the ordinance that was supplied here, that was given here,
Yes.
with the corrections, and then you're adding an amendment.
Just with the amendment, I don't think, is there any corrections, Mr. Mayor? I don't know, have we made any?
No,
No.
So I think it's only with the amendment that door is defined broader to include vestibule kind of doors.
Is that okay with the second?
Yes.
Are there any objections to adding that amendment?
I'm okay with it.
What's that? Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry,
Oh,
Scott, you were the
was
second. Any objections to adding that
I'm good with that.
amendment? Okay. Dave, Mr. Lakefield.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I just had looked on my computer and realized that the attachment was not in the packet. I think the council had asked for a listing of businesses that had received more than $5,000, and I had received that information and tried to upload it last week, but apparently it is not on the list. If you can add the podium HDMI cable, Jennifer, I have it on my computer so I can show it to you.
Well, I like that, though.
Clever. Artsy.
But to clarify, just while we're getting that up, is it is only for businesses that are getting public funds for new construction and building improvements. So like let's say for instance, our community funds, right, that went to the Commission on Aging or Souris Basin or Minot Area Council on Arts, they're not using those funds for building improvements or new construction, so they would not be obligated to follow this.
They would not be applicable, no, unless they're going to be doing new construction or building improvements in excess of $5,000.
Okay.
All right, I think we're making some progress
Oh, I
here.
saw it there for a
It was there for a
second.
second.
It was there and then it was gone. Oh, it's underneath there.
All right, and just some of this conversation we're having this evening, I think there's some other complexities that come into play here. This is the list of the Magic Fund businesses that have received funding in the last 5 years. It's a combination of, some of this was used to acquire property, some used to acquire equipment. And most of these are forgivable loans. One of these, at least one of these, is located outside the city limits of Minot. So I think we had talked at a prior meeting that that would have to be an exception or exception to the ordinance. The Visit Minot Tourism Recovery Resilience Fund provided the list. I think we would all agree that these probably are not applicable because they are funds that were used to attract events here, not directly related to a building. But they were asked for, so we have the listing of them, all of the ones more than $5,000. And Souris Basin provided some information on their Business Accelerator program, including the list of businesses that have received funding through the Business Accelerator Fund. And I don't have the details to tell how many of these were used for acquisition or improvements to buildings either.
But these are non-forgivable, correct?
These are loans that would have to be paid back. That's correct.
Versus the Magic Funds ones you listed that are forgivable.
That is correct.
Okay.
The reason that I wanted to make sure that we were clear on this is just the discussion with the TIF discussion, because on a true TIF, that is money that is being paid back as well. So that opens the door for other discussion with public funds, including special assessments. Because when we special assess a project, we use public funds, and they pay those funds back through the special assessment process. So that is just another potential thing that could cause a complexity here with this ordinance.
Oh, go ahead.
And to Director Lakefield's point about the businesses that receive Magic Fund dollars that are outside of city limits, there's not currently any exception in this ordinance. So if a business up in Mohall, North Dakota were to receive over $5,000 of Magic Fund dollars to put an addition on a building, something like that, they would have to satisfy this automatic door ordinance requirement.
Mr. Mayor? Are you, oh, are you,
Carrie.
did you have a question? I mean, were you gonna
No,
follow up with her?
no, I saw some other council members taking a deep breath like they were getting ready to talk, so. But you were the first one to speak, so go ahead, it's yours.
So I think it should be, you know, if it's Mohall, it's Mohall, right? That's public money. I think it probably might be appropriate to write in an exception for non-forgivable loans, right? Because those aren't, right, like, those are not grants. Those aren't, you know, I would argue the Magic Fund, even though it is forgivable, is still, but for the Magic Fund, they wouldn't be able to pursue the project they're working on. So I don't think, I think we go around the intent if we exempt forgivable loans, because they are receiving like a huge influx of public money. So city attorney, do you think we would have to write in, this would not apply to non-forgivable?
I'd recommend a specific amendment clarifying that. I think that would be helpful moving
Okay.
forward with the ordinance.
So that would be my second amendment to the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Do we want to, and I know we want to take action tonight, but is it something to consider? I mean, that we clean everything up and come back next meeting with a clean?
Well, she can clean it up when second reading, right?
Yes.
Because we
Okay,
still have to do
okay.
one more reading.
Okay.
So I think it will come back to us clean, Mr. Mayor, in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Okay.
So as I understand it, the motion on the floor is to approve with the amendment to clarify the vestibule. That's still the motion on the floor with a second. This is a potential further amendment.
Correct. That would exempt non-forgivable loans.
Does the second agree
Well,
with
that would
as a
be,
friendly-
now, wouldn't that, because we had no objection on the first amendment, so that became part of the motion. So that's out there. So now we need a second for that, for this additional amendment, discussion, and vote on that amendment. Am I correct?
Yes.
So is there a second for that amendment? A second for Carrie's, we have a second. Discussion. Mark, did you have something, or no?
He's just
Or
breathing
Paul.
deeply over there.
Well,
Paul-
I'll let Mark gather his thoughts. I get the intent behind, not having an exclusion for properties in Mohall, but, you have a meat processing plant, somebody opens a butcher shop, a meat processing plant up in Upham, and they get money to put up a secondary building to slaughterhouse. Do we need automatic doors on that? I mean, is it?
Not how it's defined. If you look in the ordinance, it's defined as a public, right, that the public.
A meat shop. Brian?
So it is every building open to public use that has received, so open to public use. The butcher shop, like if there's that building would not be open for public use. But the store next door that is selling the product would be public use. Right, so some of these, like even, right, didn't that magic fund we talked about up out of sight of Minot, that was for a welding company, wasn't it, Dave?
Yep.
I highly doubt they're open to the public. I mean, Mark, do you think they are? I don't know.
I presume they have a place of business you can walk into or roll into or whatever.
Mayor, if I may. So my just very quick research, looking through this, the way that would be determined is I believe it falls, and correct me if I'm wrong, planning, development director Billingsley, a butcher shop would be considered a limited food sale use type. And under table 2, that use code table underneath our land development code, it would be a commercial use. So it would fall as a commercial use underneath that particular table because of it falling within that definition of a limited food sale.
So remind us again on table 2.2.
Yep, table 2.2, and I am plugged into Dias 7 still. So under the ordinance, the uses in this use table that this would apply to are the public and private institutional uses. And here's the list of use categories. So it would be civic uses, medical, parks, open space.
Okay.
Commercial uses starts on page 2-5. And I control searched meat in the land development code. And this is where it's showing up in the definition section of our land development ordinance under limited food sales.
So it really is just limited to those ones in the public and private institutional uses.
Yes.
Civic, medical, parks, public services, and schools.
So the article under, now I've bounced back to the draft ordinance here for those following along at home. This is subsection C of the draft, the use groups. This article shall apply only to buildings and businesses that are established for public and private institutional uses and commercial uses as identified in that use table, with the exception of a home-based business.
So even if the welding shop was open to the public, it would not be under 2.2.
If it's not listed in those tables for the use.
Yeah, I can't imagine it would fit into any of those.
Yeah, it likely would be a heavy industrial
Right.
use is my assumption.
Or
I'm getting a
general
nod
industry,
from
but
Director
definitely
Billingsley.
industrial use, correct. So, yeah, I mean, so even if they were the recipient of the Magic Fund, if they didn't fit into one of these uses, it wouldn't apply. It has to be one of these, okay.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor,
Lisa?
so a lot of times up here, I've heard people say, we need to get out of the way of business. We need to let business just do their thing. And while I think the intent of this is wonderful because we want to make buildings accessible, I think it's a really, really muddy ordinance that's going to take a lot of clarification all of the time when we have businesses who are seeking some of these public funds. And I think it's going to take a lot of staff time. I think it's going to just cause some headaches. And while the intent is good, I don't know that I can support it.
Mark?
As I've been sitting here gathering my thoughts, I think this is the dilemma.
Can you bring the mic closer to you, Mark?
It's maybe a little difficult to, when we started out with this, with the facade program in mind, it makes absolutely perfectly good sense. Because people are engaging in getting funds to do a building project to improve their building. And in my mind, there was a link there. It makes perfectly good sense. They're doing construction on their building. It makes perfectly good sense to require the automatic door and to make that part of the deal. When you get a company who is outside the city and is buying a piece of grain handling equipment or a welder, I think the link isn't quite the same. Yes, I get it, they're getting some public money, but I guess that's really the choice we have to make is how far do we go with this in that direction, or does it have some limits? And I think it can be argued both ways, frankly.
Mr. Mayor?
Carrie?
So I'd like to correct Alderman Janser, is that it doesn't apply to any of those things you said. It doesn't even actually apply to the facade improvement program. So I'm going to read the list of buildings that would be included. Banquet and reception halls, clubs, convention centers, libraries, museums, religious or public assemblies, hospitals, campgrounds, a columbarium, I have no idea what that is, a cemetery, a golf course, and park. Public services, administrative offices, emergency residential services, detention facilities, postal facilities, public safety and emergency response services, college and universities, portable classrooms, educational facilities, both primary and secondary, preschool, both public and private, and vocational schools. That's it. So none of the Magic Fund grants we have given, I think would fall into that category, nor would any of the facade improvement program funds that have been given be required to comply with this. So it is none of those things.
Mayor Ross?
Yes.
Yes, I'd like to point out one clarification here. Commercial uses are also permitted in there as well. I think you named off all of the public and institutional uses, Carrie. I think if you were to look at the commercial uses, a lot of the commercial uses that would fall under the facade improvement program you'd find those uses under the commercial section of the code. Okay.
Correct, yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Mark?
Okay, so with the clarification that the community development director made, as opposed to what Carrie said, I think I can support this in that event because it it does limit where it's applied. And I think that's the key question that we need to be sure of.
Is there any concern from the council that we're enacting regulations, so to speak, or guidelines for other jurisdictions?
For other,
For instance,
no, well,
Mohawk,
then we shouldn't be
Glenburn.
but we're giving money to other jurisdictions. So I'm thinking if you're coming for our money, then you have to play by our rules. That's how I feel about it. I mean, it's not like, there's a huge, like in the whole Magic Fund history, Dave, is the welding company the only out of jurisdiction we've given, to your recollection?
I don't believe so.
No, but there's not a lot, right? Is it a small percentage of the Magic Fund? And furthermore, would they go into this category of, the uses we're talking about? Sorry, I keep on asking you just all these questions.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I don't know off the top of my head exactly. There are some businesses that perhaps, for example, now I can't even think of the name, Hot Tracks.
Hot switch.
Hot Switch, sorry.
You're right.
I'm not sure if they're located in the city limits or not. They're in the area of Minot, but off the top of my head, I'm not sure if they're within the city limits. And I believe there have been other businesses that have received money years past, further than the 5 years back, that have been outside the city limits. I think there was one in Velva at one point, and other surrounding communities as well.
So I would suggest that we just, in the Magic Fund guidelines, add, something that says, before you apply, so they clearly know upon applying that they're going to have to comply with this, and so they can make an informed decision whether or not they're going to apply, knowing that they would have to do an automatic door.
If they fit into one of those categories.
If they fit in, yeah. If it, just saying this is, part of the whole context of the Magic Fund. If you receive over $5,000, if you fit into one of these categories, if you're going to use it for new construction or building improvement, you will be required to comply with whatever this ordinance number ends up being,
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Lisa?
who will enforce this?
That's a good question. It would likely fall on city staff that are administering these particular grant programs to flag businesses when they're going through for their inspections to see have they complied with this particular ordinance. And then they would bring that forward to either our office, the city manager's office, and we would make a recommendation to the city council.
If I
Luke,
may.
would you, could you come up? I have a question for you.
So if it's a business within city limits where we conduct inspections and those
Right.
kinds of things, we can withhold,
So I'm assuming, I'm in recipient.
Hold on, let's let
we
Harold
can
finish.
withhold an certificate of occupancy for lack of compliance. When you're talking about other jurisdictions, we would not be able to do
Right.
that. It would be a civil matter and we'd have to file a suit if there was a lack of compliance.
Correct. We have no jurisdiction in any other jurisdiction.
But
than
you're doing a
ours for
walkthrough
building.
before they get their final certificate, like here in jurisdiction?
Well, here in Minot, yep, we'll be making sure that they're all fully compliant. Outside of Minot, it would have to be the person that deals with the money.
Right.
They would have to go check and make sure before those funds were distributed to the recipient. So whether finance sends me out there or finance does it themselves, I guess it would be a finance responsibility since they're the ones, or possibly a committee member from one of the committees that grants the
The public money.
Steph?
Yeah, I wouldn't see this as a building inspector responsibility unless there's some kind of building code that's being violated. This isn't an ordinance that I would ever foresee we would be withholding a certificate of occupancy unless there's something wrong with the building itself. If it's just that you built this building, you said you would put in this automatic door and you didn't, that would be something that, I mean,
We will bring it to the attention
Firm.
of the proper people controlling the money, but I won't hold a certificate of occupancy for that
Okay,
yeah, the
ordinance
remedy is
violation.
you wouldn't get the public funds.
Correct.
right, okay.
I wouldn't legally be allowed to, because it wouldn't be a building code. It's a
Right.
municipal ordinance.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Lisa?
just one final comment. I believe the intent is right. I don't think that we've worked out all of the kinks in this, and I can't support it tonight.
Okay. Anything else? Anything further? We have an amendment. Can you read the amendment?
So right now, you'll be voting on amending the original. The amendment that you would be adding to the original is the exemption of non-forgivable loans.
So we have an amendment and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Evans?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Olson?
No.
Bittner?
Yes.
Padragula?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Burlingame?
Yes.
Okay, the amendment is carried. Now moved on to the motion as amended. Is there any further discussion? Any further discussion?
No, but
Seeing
can
none?
maybe Michaela just read it one more time so everybody
ahead.
is fully, okay.
The motion would now be to approve the ordinance and include the clarification on the vestibule entrance needing both doors accessible and the amendment to exempt non-forgivable loans.
That is the motion that is on the floor. It's been seconded. Please call the roll.
Evans?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Olson?
No.
Pittner?
Yes.
Padragula?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Burlingame?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Motion passes. Moving on to item number 9 on the agenda, that's personal appearances. Now is an opportunity for those who wish to come before the council and address an issue. At this time, I would just request that speakers keep their comments limited to 5 minutes out of respect for others who wish to address the council.
Mayor Tom Ross, council members, picking up from the April 14th City Council meeting, where I compared the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge to the disconnect of communication on accessibility between city staff. Alderwoman Evans, the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge is more than a disconnect. It's devastating. The devastation I felt seeing what went wrong to cause the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge. No one can minimize for me the comparison of the disconnect I saw the bridge have and the disconnect between city staff off the conversations that become foundation of committee conversations and the disinterest of city staff on accessibility and the devastation it causes in my life. And what I felt for the city and what I felt for myself when I was rear-ended by a drunk driver. They parallel. July 21st, 2021, I was rear-ended by a drunk driver on the interstate in Maine. My truck rolled and flipped over trees and into deep brush. I was ejected from my vehicle, lying on my back in water almost deep enough to drown. I had several fractures and a complete break in my spine. I had broken ribs, a broken sternum, and a punctured lung. My scalp was degloved. My vehicle could not be seen from the highway. The search team struggled to find me for 45 minutes. One of the troopers had a chainsaw in his truck to cut the brush for a stretcher to get to me. The man that hit me was almost 3 times over the legal limit and on drugs, not knowing what he hit for the search team to know what to look for. When he found out he hit someone, he had no concern. And when the trooper told him I probably would not make it, he said probably not. When he became sober, still he had no concern for me. After being in the hospital for 7 months, I came home to Minot. Life was not just different, it was difficult. I had to relearn life as my body didn't function properly. I'm paralyzed from the chest down. I was fiercely independent. Now having to learn to be independent, it's not just humbling. It was a struggle to find self-worth. Grieving a life I had to live where it was in a community that was not set up for people like me. The collapse of the bridge itself was devastating. I felt that personally, but the disconnect of the bridge is where I parallel the disconnected communication between the city staff on accessibility. It's devastating to me how difficult and impossible it is for me to participate in a community now where everything was once accessible to me. The conversations that are had here, the decisions that are made here, the inspections that are done in the city that do not meet ADA requirements are being readily achievable, and snow removal that is not met by city ordinances, even by the city, affect my life. It's devastating, all of the things that I cannot do because of accessibility issues by the city. The holistic wellness businesses that I went to this last month, one I cannot get into without assistance, the other I could not get into and had to make a phone call from home. As one of the hosts, as the one that hosts the roundtable on issues impacting disabled communities, recognizing that there is a disconnect in the disabled communities, Alderwoman Evans, you recognizing as being disabled, I was shook by your response and lack of compassion, and it's clear to me the disconnect you have with the disabled in our community. I'm very concerned about the city's attitude on accessibility and communication between staff, making real progress and change. Today there was progress on ADA push buttons. I want to thank Alderman Padragula. I asked Alderwoman Evans at the roundtable on issues impacting disabled communities. She told me to read the sheet on the table. Alderman Burlingame, who is the director of Independent Inc., did the opposite of advocating when he originally addressed the Mandan ordinance, saying that they got their wrists slapped for making it a requirement. Alderman Padragula listened to me when I addressed the progress of more than 50 ADA push buttons being installed in less than 10 years and being amended only because of COVID and the hardship of businesses. Alderman Padragula, thank you for being a strong advocate for issues impacting disabled communities. Thank you. Are there any questions for me?
I don't think so.
Thank you.
Now is an opportunity for those who wish to address the council to come forward.
Mayor Ross, members of the council, my name is Lisa Hermosillo. On behalf of Talk United, Minot, Tanya, and I would like to thank Mayor Ross for signing the mental health proclamation. There are countless nonprofits and mental health services that work hard every day to tear down barriers and to reduce stigma for those who seek help. I also want to encourage everyone to be always mindful about how we treat members of our community. Beyond educating ourselves on mental health conditions, it's important for us to remember that something that significantly affects people's mental health is how we treat them. Specifically, our vulnerable populations, such as those struggling with mental illnesses, addiction, those with disabilities, and our LGBTQIA community in town and at Minot Air Force Base. Each and every encounter that we have with those around us will either promote and encourage the items in that proclamation, or it will work against it. I hope that this highlight on mental health for the city of Minot will foster a positive shift in acceptance for those who are struggling. So I wanted to be here and to say thank you for that. So I appreciate the support, and it's good to see that being addressed, and I'm excited to see what kind of maybe events come from this and what's going to be highlighted with that. So thank you.
Now is an opportunity for those who wish to come before the council to address the council.
Hi, my name is Nancy, and I live here in Minot. I talk to a lot of people, and a lot of people talk to me. Everybody knows that I'm a very personable person. And they asked me to ask you some of these questions, and they'd like some answers. Probably not tonight, but some answers. We don't understand why we are letting businesses come to town with a 10-year tax break, and the citizens of Minot aren't getting a tax break. I mean, in 10 years, you're going to have an empty building. They're going to take off. They got their money. They don't care. And unemployed people. We are giving a lot of them more than 10-year tax breaks. Now I hear tonight you're going to give them a 5-year tax break. The city will have all these unemployed people because they don't want to work in fast food. And what's going to happen then? Why not give the people that deserve a tax break, the citizens of Minot, or better yet, give people that are in their more advanced years? I know people that cannot pay their taxes last year because they're so high. They're struggling to make ends meet. Everything is so high, and then we keep increasing our taxes and increasing our taxes. I see no progress here, none. They are on a fixed income just like a lot of other people in their more advanced years, 70 and older. Social Security doesn't pay anything. And we all know that, and they get taxed on that too. So if they work, they get penalized for making $2 more than what they're supposed to. Another issue is it was stated in the city minutes that an assistant was hired for the city manager at $140,000. Why? In all the years I have lived in Minot, I have never seen an assistant to the manager. And we're paying this guy $140,000 a year plus benefits? We could take that $140,000 and get 2 police officers, which we need. We don't need an assistant to the manager. We need police officers in this town. What's going to happen when 5 or 6 of them retire at one time? Paul Burns just retired. There's one there, right there. We need police officers. Look what happened in Carolina last week. 4 in the same department got killed because they served a warrant. What happens if that happens here? Domestic violence is very, a lot going on around here. Read the paper. Another thing I would like to bring to your attention is, why do we have to make downtown pretty all the time? I know people that want to open up their own businesses and can't. They have some financial beings to do it, but then they have, well, we'd like to apply for the Magic Fund. Oh, we're out of money. We can't do that. We can't help you. I have seen so many people that would be so successful that get shot down every time they talk to somebody at the city. Every time. I think the citizens of Minot should vote on everything. We didn't want the Mesa Arena. That blew that. We built it anyway. But the money that we're spending stupidly should be given to police officers. We need them. Listen to me. We need police officers. We need them. You wouldn't see me go and have somebody shoot me unless it's for my son or my husband. That's their job, and they put their lives on the line every single day. One more thing I would like to bring up is there are a lot of lost souls in Minot. You see them on bikes with backpacks, and they're flailing their arms, and I don't understand why we can't use our money, our tax paying. If my money's going to go up, if our taxes are going to go up, I'd sooner see it for what I'm going to talk to you about. I would love to see that Trinity building or a building that's vacant used for mental health and drug rehab. You can't be sober after 28 days and then think, okay, I'm going to go back in the public. It takes a week for detox, a week to get your head together, the 3rd week counseling, and then, oh, you're done, goodbye. It's like a revolving door. To send somebody to rehab right now is $48,000. $48,000. Can you afford that? You're an attorney. Can you afford that? I doubt it. Can you? I mean, think about this. I wish that building was put into something that would help people. If my taxes are gonna increase, I'm all for it then. But if my taxes are gonna be used for something stupid like going downtown, ain't happening. I'm gonna complain every time I can. The city of Minot needs to think before they spend our money. This is our money spending. You guys need to use your powers for good instead of evil. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I just respond?
Go ahead, Paul.
I just want to understand, and Nancy, good point with the 70 and older. And Damon, if you could, just the homestead credit, could you speak to that real quick? How that works? There's applications, I believe, right next door. Just so that people are aware of the resources that are out there to help with some of these issues. You know, as far as police earlier, if anyone's interested, we had our budget discussions earlier. We have not enough officers to fill the approved positions we have. The positions are there. If they want to be hired, if people want to work, please come give an application to the police department, the city of Minot. We have funding available for those positions, but the reality is it's hard to fill those positions. There's money there. We would love to have more officers.
They're not getting paid enough. Watford City gets paid more than we do in Minot here.
Nancy, just, again, we can have a discussion afterwards. We'll go back and watch these, we're trying to be as transparent as possible with public funds. We televise these and record these budget discussions. We hear from the police chief and his staff on these issues. Trinity is a privately owned building. Some of these tools that we talked about earlier, as far as TIFs, Renaissance zones, these are tools to try to, if someone wants to come in and privately own a rehab facility, these are tools that they can utilize to make those things a reality. And if there's an opportunity and a need for that. So again, I just want to make sure, so if Damon, if you could touch on the homestead credit, because I want to make sure everyone's aware of this, because we've heard this before, that elderly individuals are priced out of their home because of property taxes, but there are resources available.
Yes, Mayor and Alderman Pittner. So the last legislative session, the legislators expanded the homestead credit program. We've got information at our office. You can find it on our website. You can find it on the state's website. They increased the income limit to $70,000. We just need to, we can help somebody fill the application out. They can fill the application out, turn it into us. We're here to help. So I can get some applications to Nancy tonight, and she can take some with her if she needs to.
Okay, thank you, Damon.
Anything else? Is there anyone else who wishes to address the council? Seeing none, we will move on to item number 10, miscellaneous and discussion items. 10.1, CDBG Consolidated Plan Presentation. Mr. Plank, I will turn that over to you.
Mayor Ross and council members, before I introduce our presenter, I just want to remind the public that this Wednesday from 5:30 to 7 in City Hall here, we'll be having our CDBG public engagement session. So we're encouraging the public to come out, offer your suggestions, learn about the CDBG process, the entitlement process. With the assistance of our Public Information Office, we are also going to have it on Facebook. So those of you who aren't able to attend personally, you can certainly view it on Facebook. And just one more reminder, if you are going to attend and you do have some special accommodations, we do ask that you contact the city clerk's office 24 hours in advance at 857-4752, and we'll do our best to get those accommodations. So with...
Wait, before you can, okay, because my mom's listening. So explain to my mom and others, what is the CBDG program? Why should people come out and give public input into it?
So Elizabeth McNanny is the consultant for Resource Consultants who's here to help us develop our 5-year consolidated plan. So she will be going over some of the information that's in that and how we determine what projects are eligible, ineligible, and can qualify for funding. So follow-up questions there, but we do encourage people to even post information on Facebook during the session. We'll accept those as public comments and answer those questions and get them the information that they need.
Great, appreciate that, thanks.
Any other questions on that? Okay, so I'd like to introduce Elizabeth McNanny. She's the owner of Resource Consultants, LLC. She has 16 years of working with federal programs and including over 10 years with HUD. She's also a technical assistant provider for the Housing and Urban Development HUD, and she's assisted 40 to 50 communities in developing their consolidated plans as required by HUD. So I will turn it over to Elizabeth, and she will stand for questions afterwards.
Mayor and council members, I am very excited to be here with you tonight as you are becoming an entitlement community with the CDBG program. Many of you, all of you, probably have heard CDBG in other contexts as it relates to disaster recovery, so DR and NDR. CDBG entitlement funding is a little bit different. DR funds often have flexibilities that standard CDBG programs don't have. So we'll kind of go over just a very brief overview. I know it's been a long day, so I will try to get through this as quickly as possible. The overview of the CDBG program for HUD, for entitlement communities, has 3 principles: decent housing, suitable living environment, and to expand economic opportunities primarily for low and moderate income persons in the city. And each of the activities that are funded must meet one of 3 national objectives. So benefit to low mod income people, individuals, households, families, depending upon the activity undertaken. Aid in the prevention or elimination of slums or blight. That's not used all that often, and there is definitely funding restriction amounts on that. And address an urgent need that poses a serious and immediate threat to the health or welfare of the community, which has occurred recently, and for which there is no other funding. You would not make the determination yourself to use urgent need. HUD would call you probably before you even have a chance to call them. The core principles really are about benefit to the most vulnerable people within the community and community participation. So when Chris is talking about a public meeting, we really want to encourage people to come out and talk about what the most pressing unmet needs are in the community. And leveraging with partners. So the city can't do all of the things that need to be done necessarily or implement all of the programs that may be undertaken with CDBG funds. It's really about working with community partners who have a lot of information about the work that they do on the ground, the clients they serve. And then it's strategic, being strategic and targeted. No city receives enough money to solve problems. There's no silver bullet with CDBG. There's not even a copper one. So what the best option is to really think about solving or addressing specific issues in a targeted, strategic way, maybe a couple at a time, and really make that investment go further. Why am I here? Because HUD requires you, basically to complete a 5-year consolidated plan to gain access to that funding. And what happens during that process is needs are determined, really activities, kind of broad buckets of funding are more like it, and then participation of organizations to fund. You may actually work with some of your public service providers, some of your housing providers, and really kind of target where that money, what buckets that money is going to go into. The components include a housing needs assessment, a market analysis, kind of a 5-year strategic plan for funding, and then every year HUD requires that there is an annual action plan. So taking that broad 5-year strategic plan, you have to kind of narrow it down into an annual action plan. I'm also working with the city on a separate document called an analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. And this is really about what impediments the community has as it relates to fair housing. And this is only for protected classes. So it's not about affordability and other issues that really are just a serious, serious issue kind of across the country. So when we look at this, the con plan, it starts with needs. And I usually suggest, well, the needs don't mean anything. It's like a legacy in the program that HUD uses because HUD. So I say, tell them that your needs are what they tell you they want to fund. Decent housing, suitable living environment, expand opportunities. Okay, so you get to the meat of what you're doing then with your goals. And we'll kind of go through what this might look like as it transitions down. So your goals are broad buckets. Each need may have 1 to 2 goals attached to it. Then your projects dial it down just a little bit further. And then activities are not a function of the consolidated plan or the annual action plan. Those go into the reporting system for HUD after your plans are approved. So you might start with decent affordable housing as a need. The goal might be to increase the amount of decent affordable housing in Minot. A project might be funding for the development of new residential housing. And then the activity itself, which won't be in the plan but will be on the other side, might be to assist with acquisition of property for development of multifamily housing. Just kind of an example of how everything flows. Each activity must meet at least 1, benefit primarily low and moderate income persons, and again, aid in the prevention of slum and blight, or be an urgent need. This is rarely used. Again, HUD will let you know if you can use that. The low mod income national objective is the most common, and this dictates that 51% of program beneficiaries must meet the low or moderate income guidelines. And HUD defines, well, not HUD, CDBG HUD defines low income as 50% of the area median income or below, or moderate as 80% of the area median income or below. Different areas of HUD call these ratios different things. So activities affecting a multifamily structure or public facility, including infrastructure, must guarantee that at least 51% of beneficiaries are low to moderate income. And those activities that target a single-family home must serve 100% low to moderate income. So if you have a small subdivision that you're building, you want to support acquisition because you can't actually build houses with a Housing and Urban Development Program, CDBG. If you're doing single-family development, every single homeowner must be low to moderate income. No project is eligible under this category without meeting that income benefit. Local program usage caps. So to make it even more fun, they cap administrative costs at no more than 20% of the grant. And public services, the things that we think of like senior services, Meals on Wheels, child care, things like that are capped at 15% currently. There is some rulemaking going on right now that may adjust that public service cap a little bit and may provide some additional flexibilities. I'm on the board for the National Community Development Association, so we're really involved in what's happening with that rulemaking change and really advocating for better flexibilities to more readily meet individual community needs. So, some examples of public services that would be eligible: services for the homeless, drug abuse counseling and treatment, EV services, domestic violence services, services for persons with disabilities, childcare, fair housing activities, services for seniors. There's a broad array of public services that can be funded. Majority of public service activities are affiliated with the LMI, National Objective, and meet a clientele. So you're collecting income information from everyone who comes in. And that really looks at, are you serving 51% or more as evidenced by documentation regarding family size and income? There are presumed populations: domestic violence victims, homeless, seniors, and others are actually presumed benefit. So if you are providing services to a domestic violence service provider, they are presumed to meet the low mod income qualification. Other things that are eligible within certain guidelines are acquisition, clearance of sites, reconstruction and rehabilitation of homes, construction or improvements at public facilities, and assistance to low and moderate income homebuyers. Completely ineligible activities are buildings used for the general conduct of government. So you can't remodel an office in City Hall, general government expenses, and of course, no political activities. Also, generally ineligible would be the purchase of equipment. There are some caveats to that. One of the reasons you wouldn't want to purchase equipment is because then CDBG owns that equipment, and you have to track it for the entire life until disposition. And any money from the sale of that at the end of its useful life comes back in as program income. So it's really not a great use to buy computers or things like that with this money. Operating and maintenance expenses. You can upgrade a park, but you can't pay to mow the lawn. Construction of new permanent residential structures are typically disallowed. So even though it's a housing and urban development program, you can't build houses except within certain very strict conditions. And direct income payments. So you can't write checks to people. That's a very brief overview of the program, and there are definitely some differences between how disaster recovery programs work and how the standard entitlement program works. And it is really important to get as many voices to the table to really hear what's happening in the community. And that's one of the other reasons that I'm here. So to talk with all of you, and I appreciate your time, and I'm happy to stand for questions.
Are there any questions? Scott?
Elizabeth, in looking through what you did, and thank you for the information, I learned a lot. Can you give me some ideas in some other communities? So one of the hot topics that Nancy mentioned, and she's absolutely right, is that we have an addiction crisis in town. We also have a homeless crisis, I think. Can you give me examples of tangible things that have happened in other communities that we could perhaps be inspired by?
Absolutely. So I've worked with a community that, with a nonprofit partner who provides mental health and other services to low and moderate income members of the community, they started a drug and alcohol treatment kind of arm. And that was funded, it rose to the top as a very high priority need in the community. And they actually funded that program initially, especially with CDBG funds. Now, that program has found other funding and state funding and needs less CDBG funding, but it really helped them get off the ground. They also built out a part of the building for that. They made public improvements. Thank you, Alderman.
So they were able to use, and I got a little confused on that, the slide that said operate. They were able to use it to fund like the programming?
Yes.
Okay.
Staff costs as a public service up to that 15% maximum. That's a really great question, Alderman. Thank you.
Carrie?
Chris will probably know, but you probably won't because you won't know. So, or Harold, so the housing needs assessment that needs to be done, we've just recently commissioned a pretty expensive housing needs. Will that suffice?
That is a great question. Thank you. HUD has a very prescriptive housing needs assessment that goes into their consolidated plan. And the narrative, some of that information will definitely pull into it and be part of that narrative. But HUD uses CHAS and ACS data. Most of it's old. By the time we get it, it's from 2016 to 2020. But it's a very prescriptive kind of study. So they auto-populate a lot of the numbers, and then I'll plug in narrative from that study that's already been done. I won't have to redo any of that. Yes, so that will definitely be savings.
Okay. I have another one. For the AI for fair housing, what protected classes does HUD include in that?
So it's the federal protected classes, and that's race, religion, national origin, color, familial status, sex, and disability.
So explain, okay, so why, so even though the grant money is for LMI, right, what is the benefit for doing this AI for the fair housing thing with all these other categories?
Thank you, Alderwoman. That's also a very good question. HUD is in the process of putting together some additional burden on communities for how deep they have to go into this fair housing study. And part of it is because they're really worried about presumed benefit protected classes as it intersects with the LMI population in communities. Now, HUD has been hiring quite a few people in their fair housing offices, and they are out monitoring programs to see if they are doing enough to meet fair housing standards for protected classes. And I mean, it's important that with federal funding, we actually make sure that fair housing requirements are met for those protected classes. It's the federal funding intersection.
So is part of that then, like we have High Plains Housing in Grand Forks, which is sort of our statewide housing police. So would that be, they would be part, because they do like a annual report on their findings and stuff. So I'm assuming partners like that are used to help inform the study?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And we look at any other federal reporting. So some violations or suspected violations get reported directly into HUD.
Right.
And so we go to, we do requests from HUD offices to gain access to that information and resolutions. So a lot of that will play into it. And we look at the barriers for fair housing that are fixable. Because if it's something you can't address, then it's something that isn't fixable. So we look for how can we address those really critical items in each of these communities and help, do something that's actionable. that really makes a difference on the ground.
Thank you.
Steve?
Two questions for you. One a simple one, the other one probably not simple, maybe not answerable. You said some of the criteria for eligibility for this program are a certain percentage of median income. What are those income numbers for Minot?
So I think that they just changed. And do you
I
know
can
what
look
they
them
just
up. They
changed
just
to? I
changed
think
like recently.
like May 1st.
Yeah, like Friday, yeah.
Yeah.
Alderman Steve, HUD did put out a notice that they did update the
sorry.
income requirements for this year, just like last week.
Do you happen to know what that number is?
Not off the top of my head, I don't.
But
I'll
you
get it to
sent
you,
it out
Steve,
to
by
us.
the end
But
of
I
the
can
meeting.
certainly research that for you.
I'm sorry?
I'll research that for you and I can
Thank you,
send that
thank
out to
you. The second question's a more complex one. And I'm wondering if CDBG is a potential source of assistance. And maybe this is a question I should ask of our, building official or maybe Brian. But, the whole point of this thing is housing and urban development. And although we don't have any, quote, slums, close quote, in Minot, we don't have large areas that are substandard housing. I think we have significant pockets of really substandard residences, typically single-family homes, maybe duplexes, maybe small apartments, maybe 3 or 4 units. And lately, I've come across quite a few of these, where some, quite frankly, don't seem habitable. And I would suspect strongly they're in code violation. Windows broken out, no screens, no front doors, steps that you can't step on, trash all over the place. I'm surprised some of them have electrical or water service. And they're in isolated groups, maybe 1, 2, or 3 at a time. So it's not like there's a neighborhood or even a block usually. And I'm wondering if there are any resources available or funding available that could enable us to do something about these homes. They're certainly blighted homes, and I'm concerned about the blight spreading. I see a lot of homes that are very well kept, even though they may be very inexpensive or modest. People really care. Other places, I suspect it's the landlords more than the residents, don't care at all, obviously, or don't have the resources to fix them up. So I'm concerned about the impact on the entire community. I'm concerned about the quality of life with the people who live there, particularly children who grow up in those kinds of homes. I'm concerned about the image of the community. We're trying to make Minot a more attractive city. And if you drive by one of these homes or walk by them, as I've been doing, it's an unsettled feeling. I should mention, to be very honest, I'm campaigning for re-election, and I make a point of going to every house. I go block by block. Last time I ran, I knocked on 10,000 doors. So I think I've done a pretty good survey of housing in the community. And there are places where I think most people don't go very often. I don't, but unless I'm involved in this activity. And I've really been dismayed by the circumstance under which people, are forced to live. I suspect that they may have other qualifying conditions. They may have mental health issues, substance abuse issues, maybe unemployed or certainly underemployed. But I see these little pockets, and some of them are really, 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 really horrible. I came across one home where I didn't want to approach it. It was so hostile. And I think there was a van parked in front of it, and I looked in the van, and I think the people were living out of their van because I don't think the home was habitable. So, maybe we need to be more aggressive with code enforcement, but, these people need somewhere to live. And is there any hope from someplace like HUD in terms of helping, I think frankly, raise some of these homes and rebuild, or in some cases rehabilitate? But I was really struck by that. I went to one home yesterday that was valued at $2.5 million. It was sumptuous, it was palatial. And then there are homes where I think it's a real toss-up whether you're better off having this roof over your head or being homeless. And I really feel for people who are at that end of the housing market. So thoughts about that?
Yes, thank you, Alderman. HUD has some very specific guidelines around options for rehabilitation with CDBG funding. So yes, rehab dollars can be put into properties for homeowners and for renters under certain circumstances. I always am going to put that caveat in there because I'm a regulation nerd and I teach regulation for these programs. And at the same time, there would be a challenge if you were moving someone out of a property to demolish that property, especially if they were a renter. It triggers uniform relocation, and that can be a 5-year, very, very expensive process. One of the approaches so I've known Brian Billingsley for many years. I worked with him in Caldwell, Idaho, because I worked with that city for about 4 years, ran their program. And they have made a commitment to working with developers. They don't get that much money. They probably get a little more than Minot will, but they get under $500,000 a year. And in a 6-year period, they have built close to 200 multifamily units and about 20 or so single-family homeowner model units by basically making the commitment to put money in that leverages other money. So working with developers who can get those LIHTC credits from the state, who can get home funding from the state, who understand how putting this together could work to really allow people who live in substandard housing now to move into brand new, above standard housing. And they made that commitment. So it really is dependent upon the community and what kind of focus you want to take. And it's a flexible program within reason. So if housing is the issue, then housing can be, and I'm not going to tell you it's easy because it wasn't easy for them. It took time to put this together. But if housing is the issue, then that's a possibility.
That's good to hear, because I think in the past we've focused on and gotten a great deal of money for whole neighborhoods that have been destroyed quickly by the flood. And what I'm seeing, again, personally experiencing, is isolated pockets, maybe an individual home here and there. I don't know that there's a company that was going to make money out of rehabbing, individual homes. They'll make money out of a 20-unit apartment building for the elderly or something like that. And we've had our share of those. But I'm wondering more the isolated individual things. I'm also thinking this might be an economic development opportunity for some carpenter or some plumber who, has a small business. Maybe they could get some business helping these people in these homes. And, you don't necessarily have to be a large corporation to benefit from government grants. And the scale might not be enough. Again, there might be not enough money for a home here, a home there. So it sounds like what you're saying is that we really need to look at developing, I've just identified one need from my perspective, is developing coalitions and identifying groups of people that might have a vested interest and might be able to contribute to part of the solution. Maybe part of the solution might be social work in terms of helping people, get back up on their feet. Maybe part of the solution would be, demolition of homes. Maybe part of the solution would be, doing some planning and some better code enforcement and providing incentives to people to rehabilitate their properties. But it sounds like that's what you're saying, is that there might be some underlying opportunities here.
Yes, Alderman, there are definitely some opportunities, and it really, again, is community driven. Tomorrow we're having some stakeholder meetings, folks who are working on these issues, these really important issues in the community are invited to come and tell us what they see as the most pressing unresolved issues right now in the city.
I'll be at a city council meeting all day tomorrow, when all of us will be here.
Yes.
But please, if you could share this bit of input, I can't be there. But that's something I've noticed, and it's really struck at my heartstrings. And, part of it is because in so many ways we're such a good community. People care about each other, they care about their property. But there are these outliers, and I don't think most people see them. I would never drive by some of these homes or walk or bike by them. But when you systematically explore every part of our community, you find things that, frankly, maybe you didn't want to see. But you see them now, and I just can't ignore them. I just can't wipe them out of my mind. I think of the little baby wandering around with maybe a diaper on them, and the mom screaming at them, and the flies flying through the door, and just I got a splinter from one of the wood railings on one of the houses. I mean, it just it seems like there should be some way the local government could do something to facilitate improving people's lives.
Thank you.
So put that in
Yes.
your in basket if you
I
would, please.
will. I will.
Any other questions? Nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Is that it, Chris? Okay. We will move on to item number 10.2 on the agenda. That is Minot Housing Authority, Milton Young presentation. I see Tom coming up to the podium now. Tom, the floor is yours.
Been waiting so patiently.
Thank you, Mayor Ross and council members, for the opportunity to be here. I'm Tom Alexander, Executive Director of the Minot Housing Authority. I'll give you a quick presentation, hopefully here. Most of it's pictures, so it won't be too bad. You can see the picture there on Milton Young Towers. It's been in existence since 1972. And the reason I'm here is to thank you guys and many other people, which I'll get to later, but a little background. It's taken about 5 years to get here. So we signed a subrecipient with the city of Minot in January of 2019. We procured we did an RFQ for architect and engineering service, which we signed an agreement with EAPC January 15th of 2020. We did bids for construction. We signed an agreement with Rolac Construction Contracting. Was awarded the bid in December of 2020. We had a notice to proceed in March of 2021. We had great momentum going into hiring architect and engineering firm and EAPC and getting bids, but we had a little hiccup there with COVID, delayed some things for quite a while. But once we got moving forward, it was a 6-phase process. I do have Kerry Candrian here to answer any questions that would want to get into the weeds of the building. He's been there the longest and knows the building the best. We also utilized $1.2 million of our capital funds program, and we moved close to 200 individuals within the building back and forth from their current unit to a new unit temporarily while their unit was being remodeled, and so on and so forth. The initial estimates from the EAPC did a great job of their staff coming in, the electrical engineers, the mechanical engineers. Allard Dostert and his staff did a great job in assessing the building, and the original estimate was well over $10 million. Well, we didn't have $10 million to fix it, so we had to cut a few things. And the main things that we wanted done did get done. Bathroom, sewer waste, vent pipes. You can see the list there. I won't read them all. Our goal was to make the building more efficient. I wish I had some stats for you to talk about the utilities, but our vacancies were a lot lower than they are right now at the time. So to give you a true estimate of the use of electrical, water, those kinds of things will all buff out in a year or two down the road as the building gets fuller and fuller. A little background on Milton Young. It was the Minot Housing Authority started in 1969. Milton Young Towers was completed in 1972. The original board members were Alton Anderson, Leonard Luke Singer, Jack Oven, Morris Broschart, and Olger Barsness. I hope I said some of those names correct. The original architects were Bruner, Heifel, I can't read it, it's so small, but mechanical and electrical was Schmidt, Smith, and Rush. I don't think they're around anymore. The structural engineers were Loomis, and the general contractors, the folks that are still here, Matson Construction, Mulberry, and the electrical was Maine Electric. Here's some historical documents that I came across. You know, the selection of the architect was done in 1969, a notice to proceed in 1970, and then what was called a full availability, notice of full availability in August of 72. You can see the groundbreaking ceremony there for Milton Young Towers. Looking to the northwest, you can see St. Leo's Church. That's the start of the construction there at 3rd and 4th floor, 5th and 6th floor, and so on. I hadn't done a PowerPoint in a very long time, so this one's upside down. I didn't want to fix it, but I submitted it the way it was. The original contract price to build this, if you can believe it or not, was $2,853,680, with authorized additions by the board of $69,148 for a total of $2,922,828.66. Well, we did a rehab project, and the original estimate was over $10 million just for that. So I'm not sure what it would cost to build that building today, but I'm sure it's significantly more. So here's an example of pictures of some of the waste stacks and things that needed to be replaced. They're 50 years old. It's one of the highest maintenance requests and expenses that we do have is a cast iron pipe after so many years of that out. And it build up. You can see the difference. Not like my uncle's arteries. They're pretty full. Here's some pictures of just the remodel, things that we did. One of the things we did do is at the time of construction or before, we had a waiting list for 2-bedroom units. We did not have a lot of 2-bedroom units in Milton Young Towers. So we took, I think we took 36 units of 1-bedrooms and created 12 2-bedrooms on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floor. So our overall public housing stock went from 261 to 249. Right here you can see, in doing the 2-bedrooms, we had to cut holes in the wall. We had 2 walls on the north end that were 12 inches thick, and we had the rest of them were 8. And that was a tool that was used to cut through that. I'm not 100% sure. I think that rebar is at least a good inch and a half that was used. It was quite the process. That had to be all torn apart and put back together. You know, I had to go in piece by piece in the elevator just due to weight. And then they put together in the room. So on the left there, you'll see a unit that was before remodel. The one on the right is completed. That's the new flooring there. The community room, one of the best investments we made, if it's a part of this project, is kind of remodeling the community room, which is used for a lot of different activities, but it's used on a daily basis, was replacing the windows. All those big windows you see, it never failed. Every winter we had to have space heaters in there, frosted windows. The last 2 winters, didn't have a one in there. It was fantastic. Here's some photos of more units, new bathrooms. Everything's high efficient, toilets, sinks, or the water faucets, showers. This is the main floor bathroom, which needed to be done. It's public restrooms. We did those. That was the very last project that we did. The one on the right is the women's bathroom. The one on the left is also the women's bathroom. So with that, there's a lot of people I want to thank, and I won't take too much time, but I'd like to thank the city council for approving this back in 2019. A few of you were on here and a few of you weren't. All the staff with the city. Chris Owens was the original person that I worked with. There's Plank, Dave Lakefield and his staff. Holly did a really good job within the finance department, keeping me in loop, or keeping me in line with pay apps, and if there was mistakes, they did a really good job there. Alan Dossert and his team at EAPC did a great job. We also had to procure Skier Moving Company to move tenants. That was Marsh Properties. That was, a 2-year process to get people moved in and out, back and forth. I can say it now because it's done. It's one of the main things you have to do. And the previous presenter, CDBG regulations, it's something that we're not too familiar with because we're a small housing authority. It's extremely complicated for us, and we had a lot of assistance and a lot of people that knew what they were doing. We had to have a relocation plan. We had to have coordination. We had to have public meetings. We didn't have one tenant complaint, which is unheard of, and we only had one person move outside of Milton Young Towers just due to the noise. We moved her into another unit that we had vacant within the city. Reconstruction did a great job, not only with the rehab part of it, but all the staff there. We didn't have any issues with tenants and general contractor with Rolac and all the subs. You can see those, Minot Plumbing, Northwest Flooring. I don't want to talk about them all, but I think they may have enjoyed a few ice cream socials and breakfasts that we provide. It was a great working relationship with everybody there. I didn't listen, I forgot, but we have one original board member left on our Housing Authority board that approved us to do this. But I also like to thank the previous board members that approved this and all the staff. It takes a great deal of work to coordinate this effort. Kerry knowing the building as well as he did and working with the engineers to have a plan to property manager Denise and Daniela and Mark and all the team, Tiffany, to coordinate with tenants to move. It's a great deal amount of work and takes time and a lot of energy. And then, in my career, I guess I've worked darn near 36 years and had a lot of mentors, but one of the best ones I've ever had was Melissa Ziegler from CDN Smith. Without her following all the rules and regulations and progress that would not have happened. She kept me in line, made sure I followed all the rules, or we followed all the rules. And so I guess with that, I'd stand for any questions.
Do we have any questions? Steve?
2 questions. First of all, because of the significant federal funding and other funding, governmental funding, there are eligibility requirements for who can live there. Is it also basically LMI, low moderate income housing?
Yeah, correct. It's income-based.
Income-based. And what is the minimum or what is the maximum income for a person?
It's based on income, and it's at 30 to 50% of the area median, and it's all based on the subsidy that's provided to the building stays with the building. It doesn't stay with the person if they move out. So the subsidy that they receive, and it all depends on their income.
So Chris will give us those figures, or give me those figures.
I sent them to you, they're in your inbox.
Okay, I'm going to look at them.
118,000 is the median.
They just revise them.
So 50% of 118,000 would...
30%.
30%, I'm sorry, so it'd be $40,000, something in there.
What I have, this is on our application. It was as of April 5th, 2024, 50% of the area median for a 1-bedroom or 1-person household is $36,850. 2-person household is $42,100 at 50%, and then there's 30% is $22,100 for a 1-person household, and for a 2-person household it's $25,250. So we have rents varying from, our minimum rent's $50, and then we have people paying the market rent, which is right around the $500 mark.
Really?
I can't tell you, I don't have the stats with me, but I can't give you the average that we have.
That's,
right
that's
now,
fine,
but-
that's helpful. Are there any other eligibility requirements, like having a disability of any kind, or?
Nope, it's income, let me see here, it's income, qualified, and then also background checks for rental history, and then any violent or criminal activity within the past 3 years. We look at everybody on an individual basis, because we're not in the business of making people homeless or not homeless. So, I mean, we do have folks that have a criminal background, so we look at everybody on an individual basis. It varies. There's no cookie cutter eligibility requirement.
So having a criminal history might not necessarily automatically exclude you?
But not automatically, no.
Okay. The second question I have is, we've obviously, I mean, it sounds like it's a very strong building to begin with, and did a very good job designing, constructing it, and we've recently put a lot of money into it. What's the estimated lifespan of this building? How long will we be able to rely on it to house people in our community?
Well, you can see by the pipes, all those are replaced. That was huge. I would estimate that if we can get a few more upgrades in the next several years, is that it should last another 40 to 50 years for sure. It's a solid building. I mean, it really is.
But you will need more upgrades.
Pardon me?
You will need more upgrades.
Yes. Well, if you got any ideas for new elevators or got any funding, I'll take it.
Well, thank you. That sounds like a very good investment.
Scott?
Tom, we dabbled in our first meeting at 8 a.m. this morning, so we've now been here for 12 hours, so I'm glad I waited this long to get to talk to you. So, question, first off, I just want to make a general comment that all the feedback I've heard is about how wonderful it is and how it went from a facility that was really on the edge of its lifespan to being a place people want to live in. So fabulous work to everybody involved. And actually, Steve's last question kind of, or answered part of mine, is looking forward and having that view towards the future. Is there the capacity right now to invest? I mean, low income, low rents oftentimes mean there's not a lot of extra meat on the bone when you're done. Is there capacities within the system now that allows you to actually build up reserves to actually make changes when it's appropriate, or is that just going to be an ongoing struggle for this building?
In our public housing portfolio, HUD has said it for many, many years, it's significantly underfunded for capital needs by billions of dollars nationwide. It's no different here than North Dakota for the housing authorities that have public housing. We've recently received a few increases, but it's very hard to maintain. And our staff over the last 20, 25 years have done a great job of maintaining what we have, because we also have 40 other scattered sites throughout the city. And, that's 40 hot water heaters, 40 furnaces, roofs, all that plays a factor. We've done a pretty good job of keeping up. Is it what it should be? No. But, we do the best of what we can and what we have. And we always take advantage of any funding that's available that comes forward, either through grants or like through the resiliency funding. We'll do what we can to keep our existing stock where it's at.
The other thing I'll just say, because once you finish a multi-million-dollar project like this, the important thing is to ask what's next. But one of the things that you talked about, absolutely correct, is that there are, some folks that this housing, much of your housing is not appropriate for, people who do have criminal background checks, people with recent arrests, people with recent domestic violence situations, people with bad rental histories. That's leading so much to what I talked about earlier with the problems around homelessness within our community, and somewhat also leading to some of the unsafe housing that's available and being taken advantage of because there is no other alternative. Do you have any thoughts on how Minot Housing Authority can play a role in some sort of a supportive housing arrangement moving forward, or is there any thoughts on that, or any discussions within yourself or your staff or your board?
Well, that's our mission. We're not in the business of operating a homeless shelter, but we're there to help. We see people every day We work with all the agencies within the city to provide housing, help people with applications. We work with a lot of, I would say, social workers, service coordinators, and other professionals within the community in order to provide housing, you know, and within our guidelines that we have in front of us. I mean, to me, there's not going to be enough affordable housing. There never will be. You have to have a very healthy stock. You know, we're going to lose another 100 or 200, I think, with the flood protection of folks with limited income trailers. I mean, we're always going to see the need for affordable housing in many forms.
I knew that was going to be your answer, but I wanted to make sure we talked about it publicly as well, so thank you.
Carrie?
So we just completed our affordable housing inventory, and one of the statistics that came back was 18% of the units at Milton Young are vacant. What do you attribute that to?
Well, I can tell you, one of the strategies that I had, and Mayor Ross can attest to this because he got a letter from HUD, slapping my hands a while back. It was at the point in time, it's very complex to move tenants from one unit to another, down floors, across. We didn't know what folks would want, if they'd want to, at the time. We ended up being very lucky and being able to move people within the building. And it was my decision, with some board approval, that we would hold off on accepting applicants while we're in the middle of construction. It would get very confusing. And so with that, we get scored on our vacancy rates. And our vacancy rates for Milton Young were very low, and we get scored on it. So we're not a high-performing housing authority because of vacancies. However, and as a part of that process, we have to have a recovery plan. And that is in place and has been approved by HUD Regional Office, our board. We had as high as 114 vacancies during the construction. Right now, we have 33 vacancies, which is about 16% vacancy rate. And as of Friday, we know of the next 30 days, there'll be 4 move-outs. We have 2 applicants approved. We have 4 people in verification. And then we have 6 people this week that will be interviewed as a part of the initial process for Milton Young Towers. So we've did signs, we do social media. I don't understand all the social media, how it all works with geofencing and whatever. We have radio ads going right now. So it's working. The season to move is coming. It's here. And you always see a downfall in folks wanting to move during the coldest parts of the year. So, that happens. If we continue at our current pace, we should be at 90% occupancy by the end of the year. That's our goal. We visit with our HUD portfolio specialists on a monthly basis and review the numbers, talk strategy. That's done on a monthly basis, though.
Just have one. I think something that's helped, and I think you get the credit for this, is at least for the youth we serve at YouthWorks, is permitting use with infractions, who otherwise, criminal infractions, who had been denied housing before with Milton Young are now actually living in the towers. And I hope that has impacted more than the youth population, but I know, that was brought to your attention, and you and your board really worked hard to make that a reality. So as somebody who has seen, 4 youth now who have infractions on their record be residents of your towers has been very gratifying, and I hope it, is a good move from your perspective for doing that.
Thank you. It's nice to hear. It's a lot of our staff. That's where the credit goes. It doesn't go with me. The staff work hard and do the grinding with folks. So I'll definitely let them know.
Anything else? Anything that? Thank you, Tom. Good presentation. Moving on, the agenda, item 10.3, the capital improvement plan. Mr. Meyer.
Load it up for me. Okay. Well, this is a high-level overview since I'm the last guy between you and home after a 12-hour day, so we'll make this pretty brief. Like we've done in years past, we'll just kind of walk you through the process. It's a pretty long process for staff up to this point. We evaluate every project that we put in the capital improvement plan. It starts with a pretty long spreadsheet process that we have, data gathering, et cetera, and we develop these projects, and eventually it goes into a plan, and we present it to you here tonight. And that's what we have in front of you. It's a series of projects, and we're seeking your input. So a few weeks ago, we sent you that document, and if you have questions or want to see some things a little bit differently, for sure let us know, and we can make some adjustments. So a comparison between the 2024 to 28 and then 25 to 29 CIP. Overall, it's an increase of just about $174 million when you compare the two 5-year CIPs. A lot of that comes from state funding. It's a $135 million increase, and then $35 million in additional sales tax funding. But a lot of that is tied to flood control projects, which is about a $92 million increase. And a lot of that is due to now that we have certainty and a path forward on funding that project, we're able to account for where those funds are coming from. It's a little bit easier for us to program. And another thing is we have some projects a little bit later in the CIP, some large-scale transportation reconstruction projects now that have been programmed in. Now, it's always interesting when you put these CIP projects together. This is a living document, so as we put this document together a few weeks later, then you find out, well, we didn't get funding for some of those projects. So they're shown in here because it's the best information we have at the time, and then those things change. So just keep in mind that especially in those later years, some of those projects are based on best assumptions made at that time. So here, this is just some data that we have based on our funding sources. So about 60% of this plan is funded with state and federal dollars, which is good because that means we're using non-local sources for the majority of our capital improvement plan. A lot of the sales tax funding that we're using is being used as match dollars for our flood control project. You'll see down there at the bottom, another one of our large revenue sources is revenue bonds, which is basically for utility projects. I want you to hang on to that for a second. We'll come back to that. And then in the other category, that's basically what we're using for when we talk about reserves. Sometimes we have some other funding sources that are lumped into other, but a lot of that is match money that we're using for federal or state grants, for our water main replacements. You'll also notice in here under local tax levy, none of our capital improvement plan projects are funded with local taxes. So all of these are funded with either state or federal funds, some sort of bonding or reserve funding, and just under $5 million in special assessments, primarily storm sewer and street lighting specials. And then if we break this down by department, the big spenders, of course, here are my department in engineering and public works. We drive a lot of the capital improvement plans just because of the functions of our department. All of the flood control projects are under the public works department. We, of course, handle all the large-scale reconstructions and streets, special assessments, and some of the other large-scale transportation projects that we do. We fall underneath that. And then you'll see the airport and then the different utility funds that are underneath that. You will notice again that that $100 million cost in sanitary sewer, about 90 of that is a mechanical wastewater treatment plant, and the other 10 is a large lift station project. And we'll get to that here in this next slide. The whole goal of a capital improvement plan, or one of the goals, is to try to level load this so that you're spending about the same amount of capital every year, so it's something you can budget for. That way you're not having these large swings up and down every year. So it's a little bit easier for us as a city to plan for. And we're getting better and better at this every year as we're able to focus a little bit more on projects and moving some things around, especially as flood control, that funding is, we've been able to focus in a little bit more on that and having a level funding stream from the state. So that's helped us to try to focus that in a little bit more. You'll see in the later years of our capital improvement plan, especially within my department in engineering, where we have some of these big swings. A couple of those are like our Broadway reconstruction project. We don't know exactly how the DOT is going to fund that yet, so we took that entire huge project and lumped it all into 1 year. Well, that's not going to happen. That's not how they're going to fund it. But until we have clarity on that, that's how we have to program it. The preliminary indication from DOT is that's not how it's going to go. We're probably going to end up with starting the preliminary engineering in maybe 28, and then hopefully that'll lead to construction in the later years. So we know probably right from the jump about $55 million in 2028 is going to come out the CIP. In 29, that sanitary sewer project that we've been talking about, I've been talking with our utilities director. A lot of those large-scale sanitary sewer projects, they're all growth-based. We've been keeping them in the CIP just because, we're getting some pressure for a time there from the state to maybe do a mechanical plant. That pressure has gone away. So that's probably a project that we can take out of the CIP at some point. So that's $100 million that probably shouldn't be there. So when you start to take out some of those large-scale projects, we're actually getting pretty close to level loading this CIP. So I think we're actually in pretty good shape when you look at those bars on the graph. So I think overall we have a pretty good plan here. We're getting closer to where we should be. We're keeping the spend burden I think pretty balanced between the different funds. Again, remember that a lot of these projects that are built in here are projects that probably should happen within the next 5 years. Not all of these will be funded. These will be evaluated by you as council as these get closer to future budgets. The 2025 projects that are within the capital improvement plan, some of these are already going through the process. Like tonight, the 16th Street project, some of those budget dollars are already built in, and they'll be presented to you in the 25 budget here in the next few weeks. Finance will take these projects that are in the 25 CIP, and we'll start building those into the city budget here in the next few weeks. So, high-level overview. Obviously, all the projects are built into the appendices if you really want to dig into it. If you have specific questions about some of the other department CIP projects that I probably can't answer, I'll have to defer to those department heads, but be happy to take any questions you may have.
Do we have any questions? Steve?
3. First one is the sanitary sewer, $100 million in 29. Is that for a mechanical treatment plant that you've talked about before?
Yes, about 90 million of that is, and then there's about a $10 million lift station that would be included in that cost as well.
Obviously, we don't know, but is there any thought that the federal government might help contribute toward that because of their concerns about better sewage treatment and cleaner water?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Padragula, generally speaking, no. They are going to possibly provide some sort of low-interest loan funding, usually through like an SRF program. Those are usually ran through the state. So the utilities director and his staff are really good at providing or applying for grants for like water main replacement. You'll talk about that tomorrow. There's some low-interest loan funding for those. That could be a program that could be applied for this.
So that might be another thing to look at in terms of our lobbying agenda with the legislature, is trying to get them to spend some of their $10 billion on these kinds of things that would benefit us and other communities. Second question is, a few years ago I asked you about the notion of deferred maintenance, and I know that some of the specifics address that in this plant. The sewage plant was one of those things, but you know, nationally there's a crisis, not a crisis anymore, it's been going on so long, with municipalities and other governments don't spend enough money on the big ticket items. Bridges fall down, roads collapse, stuff like that. And I asked you a few years ago for a listing of what needs weren't in the capital improvements budget. Could you give us a quick update on that? Not today, but when you present your budget, I seem to remember you coming up with something like $520 million of stuff that we really need to replace at some point. Some of it we're chipping away at year by year, but it would be helpful if we know what's not on the CIP that you think needs to be done or will need to be done. This last comment is more of a comment. I'm impressed with how apparently objective the criteria are and the planning process within each department is. You give points for this and points for that. But what I'm having trouble with, and I'm hoping maybe we can make this part of our strategic planning process, is a discussion of comparing, one department's needs and desires versus another's. And, and that's probably our job to meld those together. Something may get a very high rating within a department, but I don't know that it necessarily means it should get a high rating, at a city level. And that's one of my frustrations. I'm not being critical in any sense, but one of my frustrations is that we don't have a unified citywide vision of where we're going. I mean, we have the four criteria we use, resilient, whatever they are. But I don't think we've operationalized that yet, and that's part of the reason I've been arguing for all these years for more of a strategic planning process where we try to meld these together and make some community-wide, not department-wide, but community-wide priorities. Yours is a very good first step, and again, I'm impressed with the objective methodology. That's where you have to start, but I think it's going to have to be more than just going down the menu and picking one here and one there, and having more of a sense of our goals overall. So I'm hopeful that the strategic planning process will help with that, because this is a good start, but certainly not the end. So I appreciate all the effort you and the other departments have put into this, and I'm looking forward to the more detailed discussion and presentation later. Thank you.
Any other questions of Lance? Seeing none, thank you, Lance.
You're welcome.
Okay, real quickly, just before we get to adjournment, we had a little bit of background. There was a piece of equipment that was supposed to be attached to, on the consent agenda, 7.11. That was not included on the itemized list of the attachments. So I would like a motion to reconsider item 7.11, so we can add that piece of equipment and get that approved.
Motion to reconsider 711.
We have a motion to reconsider. Is there a second?
Second. I'll second.
We have a motion by Carrie, a second by Mark.
Can you tell us what piece of
Harold.
equipment?
Then we need to take roll.
What's that?
I believe, do we need to take
Mayor
roll
Ross.
first? I'm sorry. Do we need to vote on actually reconsidering this first?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Well, yeah, after the debate, right?
Yes, you can offer
Yeah.
an explanation as to why the motion to reconsider is warranted.
Mayor Ross, Alderwoman Evans, it is a 1991 E1 Titan ARF truck.
Fancy.
I was waiting for. In a sense, we purchased a replacement ARF truck. We'd like to dispose of the old one. We'd like to do that at the auction. It should have been included on the list that was approved on the consent agenda, and so we're asking the council to add that to the list so we can auction it at our scheduled auction.
And we can just go by, so is there any other questions? Any other questions or debate?
No, but I wanted to remind people of the auction that is at police compound, right? Impound, out by Public Works. Because it not only is vehicles, it's things like that, it's bicycles as well. So it's a good opportunity. Chief Klug, can you come tell us what time it's at, just for, do you know what time? It's on the website, it's on the Facebook page, but it really is a good chance to I get some good bicycles, but there's all kinds of equipment there, so there it is, May 11th, 10 a.m. And there's a list of what's for sale, so.
Yeah, come buy an ARF truck.
Right, and Mother's Day
That's
is the
right.
next day, so hey, make your mother happy.
We have a motion to reconsider and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call the roll.
Evans?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Pittner? Padragula?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Burlingame?
Yes.
So then do we need another motion? Okay, then a motion to reconsider item 7.11 with the addition. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion by Carrie. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mark. Is there any discussion?
So if I plan on buying this ARF truck, do I have to abstain? I'm just kidding, I'm just kidding.
Highest bidder, it's yours.
Go for it.
My wife will be so pleased.
Happy Mother's Day.
Further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Evans?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Pittner?
Yes.
Padragula? Ross?
Yes.
Burlingame?
Moving on to, go ahead.
Just a reminder, I did make an amendment to the agenda tomorrow to include that it's gonna be a rolling schedule, so the times are approximations. I will state that the budget tours will start in the council chambers. The group will then go on tours around the city, for the public works and engineering. There will be lunch. The afternoon ones, some will be on site, such as the airport and the library. But when we come back, the council chambers will be used for planning commission, so the finance conference room is on this floor, just towards, well, my right now. But it's on this floor, and that's where we will reconvene when we get back to the building.
Thank you, and happy Clerk's Day.
And I just
The
have one
week.
thing for city staff. I just want to congratulate our traffic engineer, Stefan, and his wife, who recently added a little baby girl, Tegan, to their family. So congratulations, and I'm glad to hear baby and mom and big brother are all doing well.
Motion to adjourn.
Any other announcements? We have a motion as second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We are adjourned. Good meeting, everybody.